Number 5. Al Worden. American test pilot, engineer, and NASA astronaut Alfred Merrill Worden was the module pilot for the Apollo 15 lunar mission in 1971. One of the 24 people who have flown to the moon. Woohoo! He's got a couple of firsts though. He orbited it 74 times in the command module. He was the first to drive a moon car. After Apollo 15 reached lunar orbit and his crewmates departed, and Worden spent 3 days alone in his module. That's terrifying. Traveling the furthest out from any other human. After he returned, the crew and him became involved in a NASA controversy, however. Not over leaked alien info, but over postage stamps they had taken to the moon. Yeah, big no-no apparently. They were reprimanded by NASA and did not fly in space again. Worden remained at NASA until 1975, then entered a private sector. And then it gets weird. On a British television morning show, Al Worden started talking about some interesting stuff. They asked him, "Why should we keep going back to the moon?" He paused and replied, "Survival. Survival of our species." Worden also rejected the notion that humans could colonize planets within our solar system, calling them unsustainable. Then he claims he knows where to find habitable planets. When we just think there's somebody else, but we were the ones who came from somewhere else because somebody else had to survive. They got in their little spaceship and they came here and they landed and they started civilization here. And if you don't believe me, go get it. When you hear an astronaut say that, kind of jarring. Number 4, Roswell. As always, if you dig what we do here on Top 5 Scary, make sure you hit that like button. Birth of the UAP phenomenon. 1945. The US's first nuclear explosion. 1946. First underwater nuclear explosion. 1947. The first crash flying saucer. Coincidence? I think not. Especially since they've been known to hover around nuclear bases. Probably for the better. Humans are kind of the worst. Local rancher Mac Brazel finds the wreckage on his property in Lincoln County, New Mexico. Sheriff Wilcox shows RAAF's commanding officer Colonel Blanchard the materials, and during the night, the Air Force combs the entirety of the property, apparently harboring 2 small injured alien bodies. Taking them, of course, to Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico that night. And the very next morning, the Roswell Air Force makes a statement claiming they have recovered a crashed flying disc. The head intelligence officer who investigated and recovered some of the debris. The very next day, the Army retracts their statement, and all of a sudden, a high-altitude weather balloon. Can you believe that, huh? AKA the birth of a conspiracy theory. Test pilot, engineer, NASA astronaut, and of course, a ufologist. Ufology is the pseudo term for somebody who studies the UFO phenomenon. I don't think the pilot of the Apollo 14 in 1971 and spent 9 hours working on the lunar surface. He was the 6th person to walk on the moon. Yeah, he was walking while Worden was up there drifting in the currents of space. Mitchell belonging to other planets. Thousands. Dateline NBC conducted an interview person. Quote, "The evidence for alien contact was very strong and classified by governments who were covering up visitations and existence of alien bodies in places such as Roswell, New Mexico." Mitchell's book, The Way of the Man, was studying alien bodies, and that this group had specifically stopped briefing US presidents since the 1960s. He said, quote, "We all know that UFOs are real. Now, the question is, where do they come from?" In 2008, Mitchell said several times, but that the government had hidden the truth for more than 60 years. Scary stuff, scary stuff. He sadly passed in 2016. If we just reread the credentials alone, just one more time. Number 2, James McDivitt. James Alton McDivitt is an American test pilot, Air Force pilot, engineer, and NASA astronaut who flew in both the Gemini and Apollo programs. After graduating test pilot at the Air Force. In 1962, McDivitt was selected by NASA for the Gemini, an object which approached the Gemini 4 as they were orbiting Earth. Over Hawaii, Major James McDivitt said, "I was flying with Ed White. He was sleeping at the time, so I don't have anybody to verify this story. Selected what he thought was what they were talking about, at least before I had the chance to review it." In 1975, McDivitt said, "I never made a big deal out of it. It was something I definitely couldn't identify. It looked like a beer can with a pencil sticking out of it. Yeah, I would eventually give up on that too if those were my credentials and people were like, yeah, right, James." When somebody has like 25 years of designing and flying. Gordon Cooper. Leroy Gordon Cooper Jr., an American aerospace engineer, test pilot, US Air, the first human space program in the United States. You know the pictures. It looks like they're wearing a tinfoil suit, you know? Old school, old school. After service as a fighter pilot in World War II, he qualified as a test pilot in 1956 and then was selected as an astronaut in 1959. In 1963, Cooper piloted the longest and last Mercury spaceflight, Mercury Atlas 9, the first person to sleep in space and the last American launched on a solo orbit mission. In Cooper's autobiography, Leap of Faith, co-authored by Bruce Henderson, he recounted his experiences with the Air Force and NASA and an alleged UFO conspiracy. Cooper claimed to have seen his first UFO while flying over Germany, then saw them land in a dry lake bed. Cooper claimed up until his death that the US was indeed covering up UFOs. He said that there were hundreds of reports made by his fellow pilots, many coming from the military pilots on radar. In his memoirs, Cooper wrote that he had seen unexplained aircrafts tons in his career, and that in 1978 he actually testified before the United Nations on the topic. He sadly passed in 2004. He was such a strong advocate for disclosure, and all of these astronauts are remembered as putting their neck and name out on the line for some truth. But I mean, those UFO enthusiasts, huh? They're all wackos, right? Right? Number 5. Leland Melvin. American engineer and now retired NASA astronaut Leland Melvin has spent hundreds of hours in space. Literally hundreds. Leland holds 4 honorary doctorates for his service in education, the sciences, and philanthropy. Doctorates. I'm just saying that before the comments start rolling in saying he's just another wacko. He's crazy. They're not wackos, people. Any of them. They've been screened so many times by so many people with so many tests, they have to be damn well near perfect before going up on or in NASA's budget. Before his career with NASA, guy made the NFL and then said, you know what? I think I'm gonna be an astronaut. He was selected by NASA in 1998 after getting injured with a football career. Guy goes from the here and up there, mission after mission with NASA. He's got quite the practice at the whole floating around thing. When Leland was pressed about otherworldly visitors and his ideas about the cosmos, he said this when he was working up in orbit. He had seen something translucent, curved and organic looking when he was working with fellow astronaut Randy Bresnik. The pair, NASA's official response was probably ice. Yeah, nice and specific there, Houston. Thank you for that. When has NASA ever said probably? Melvin dismissed this and figured it was NASA's explanation to just cover it up. Like, who's more qualified here? That's all I'm asking. When the most qualified people are like, yeah, or we need some more Windex on those windows there, NASA. Huh? Number 4. Hello. Have you ever seen a UFO out there? Yeah, you. Hence the obsession with all this stuff. Those Reddit rabbit holes, boy oh boy. Speaking of falling into a wormhole of conspiracy and who said what, astronaut Ivan Wagner came up with some roomies up there on the ISS. He was on the ISS as a first timer just back in 2020. Does NASA initiate rookies up there? Like pull pranks on the newbies? Like no gravity, just unbuckle you while you sleep, flow you out, you know? The American commander of said expedition. When Wagner was orbiting the Earth, he might have captured some footage of UFOs, better known as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. It's the jargon. When he saw a string of really weird lights moving in a really weird way. Australis, near Antarctica, and then all of a sudden this blob of organized lights just cruises on over the globe. Looks like a blob of like glitter just trucking across space. Like, what is that? Of course NASA didn't follow up. Like, what are they gonna say? Oh yeah, those are stars. Also, what a lame excuse. Space junk? Okay, so you're saying there's lots of litter up there, that's what you're saying? That's what just zipped over my house silently, defying gravity and lasered up my cow? Yeah, I don't think so, NASA. Number 3, Chris Hadfield. Retired Canadian astronaut, engineer, fighter pilot, and musician. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Hadfield flew 2 missions and also served as commander on the International Space Station before his career. So he has the credentials to say the least. In 1992, Hadfield was accepted into the Canadian astronaut program. He first flew in space in 1995, and since then, he says he's seen tons of stuff up there just zipping around that even a man with all those credentials says he can't explain. Quote, I've seen countless things in the sky, but he has a pretty cool take on it. He doesn't keep it to see something in the sky that you don't understand and then to immediately conclude it's intelligent life from another solar system is the height of foolishness and lack of logic. However, Chris that Mars was a lot like Earth 4 billion years ago when life first formed. So if it happened here, did it happen there? It would be evident somewhere in the geologic records. All we need is one fossil for proof. He thinks there could be potentially alien life in the clouds of Venus or on the distant moons of one of our gas giants. Researchers have suggested that there could be microbial life in the clouds of Venus because of the presence of ammonia, which on Earth is a key indicator of aquatic life. Aquatic life, eh? Atlanteans? Hadfield on the UAP phenomenon, quote, "We have 7 people living up there. We've been sending people to space since I was born. I spent half a year off planet looking everywhere and only be caught on some strange video by fighter pilots. It just doesn't pass any basic sniff test or logic. It's fun, it's exciting, but if you use reason, the whole argument falls apart." End quote. Okay, Chris Hadfield, keep your secrets from now, you polite Canadian you. Wait till people start looking into Paul Hellyer, another very polite Canadian with some secrets of his own. Until then, you keep distracting us up there with that guitar, Chris. I see you, Jake Sully. Number 2. Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon for the very first time, saying those very first famous lines we all know so well. Collins was back parking that thing up there. I can't even stay in a basement with the lights off by myself. Imagine being up there just drifting in the currents of matter, like being in the middle of the ocean. Yeah, no way, dude. The astronaut retired from NASA in 1970 and spent his free time answering questions on Twitter. Apparently, he has gotten some really interesting buzz. Mr. Collins invited the interweb to chat, saying, quote, "Are we alone? Hashtag Ask Michael Collins." And boy oh boy, did he get some responses. Everything from also wackos who like aliens for talking about this. Collins, quote, "I used to think that NASA's a much more interesting place," end quote. Collins has talked about it in the past about the possibility of alien life existing beyond Earth and doesn't shy away from discussing the topic in full. In 1999, for instance, parts of this infinite cosmos. So maybe it has then. He wrote in his book saying, quote, "I am alone now. Truly alone, and absolutely isolated from any known life. I have been places and done things you simply would not believe."
It descended to the moon in 1971. He was the 6th man to ever walk on the moon, and he is a devout believer in aliens being out there. He insists that Mexico. He said it was a known secret that aliens are directly involved in intervention to prevent us from destroying the planet. Which, if that's the case, I've got nothing but thanks to give for our extraterrestrial friends. Thanks for that. We're not that responsible. The question is, where are they coming from? Now, NASA didn't quite have the same tune, but we don't share his opinions on this issue. Well, of course. If you've been sitting on a seat and UAPs out there today alongside Tom DeLonge, championing that he believes firmly that NASA and the Pentagon aren't telling a team to research potential UFOs, although the project was disbanded, Elizondo never gave up his mission within the US inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of. Kind of unnervingly, when asked about that, he said, "We found a lot. We identified anomalous aircraft that are seemingly defying the laws of aerodynamics." Which, suspicious, right? Right? Not just me. The quote continues, "Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and forces of a human or anything biological." Elizondo's gone so far in the past as to suggest it sounds extremely like someone higher up didn't want people finding out about whatever Elizondo was getting onto. And why not? Perhaps we'll see their ships descending on us and it's already too late. But what if our first contact was something? But we have to wonder what the signal was, right? I mean, we have to admit that's a bit suspicious. Well, in one form or another, government agency, Santa, we can do this. A couple years ago, we experienced a wave where there were clowns hanging out on the street corner of like every rural street in North America. We got over that. We all saw Tiger King together. Aliens won't even be that weird, I don't think. Now, Project Blue Book was officially disbanded because according to a joint review, nothing significant ever came from it. Now, since then, it was thought that no government agency was looking into UAP research at all. Air Force had been researching aliens and possible sightings this whole time under everybody's nose, and they leaked a bunch of documents and footage, and you should look it up after this video. Developments. We are probably coming to one of the most exciting times in UAP history. As after the UAP report came out, there is probably more legitimacy towards the discussion around the serious existence of extraterrestrial life now more than ever. As of October, search of UAP and extraterrestrial life, 16 hand-picked specialists have been selected to analyze former data and determine how to go forward observing future events. Since it's kind of hard to ascertain with missing data, so it's more focused on what observations will be needed to understand UAP sightings going forward. The team is going to include researchers and key personnel from all divisions, all walks of life, notably including former astronaut Scott Kelly, who formerly served as a pilot for the Space Shuttle Discovery, yet saying, "I think there's life in the universe. Hopefully intelligent life, but I don't think they've tax on this thing." Officially, openly, the government is talking with us about studying this phenomena. This is amazing. Now, you know how scientists are. They gotta have some numbers on a paper before they'll believe it. An associate administrator at NASA, Thomas Zerbchin, said, "Data is the language of scientists and makes the unexplainable explainable. Exploring the unknown of space and the atmosphere is at the heart of who we are at NASA. This is maybe the most exciting time in history to be a UAP fan." Number 5, Roswell. So, if we're gonna be discussing NASA conspiracy theories, only makes sense to start out one of the time-tested conspiracy theories before we get into the truly wild ones. So let's start with one of the most infamous conspiracies. Broke headlines by telling the world he'd seen a flying saucer. The rancher told media that he suspected the debris he had found had belonged to a similar downed alien craft. Now the Air Force got wind of this and were interested in the story, naturally, and came to recover the debris off the property, leading to an infamous headline: RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region, and from there, conspiracy theories would run rampant over as to what was happening in Roswell. Very cloak and dagger, hush hush about whatever it was that had crashed onto that farmer's property. Was it from a spacefaring race? Had the government really captured a downed alien craft? Were they using it to reverse engineer new technology? There were leaked blueprints for US developed UFO technology. Those were some of the more colorful theories. Now the official story is that the debris recovered was from a weather balloon being used to record sound waves caused by Soviet nuclear testing. Anything else in history. And to this day is probably still one of the most famous cases of UFO sightings. Now whether or not you believe the official story is one thing, but we may never know the full story. And my friends, if you're looking for more stories of aliens, monsters, all things creepy, crawly, sticky, slimy, and things that go bump in the night, well baby, there's no better spot than Top 5 Scary. Number 4. NASA's a fraud. Okay, let's get into it. Among conspiracy theorists, there's a not totally unpopular shell company that exists solely to burn up taxpayer money, hated CGI renderings, and all the astronauts are very well trained actors. And if you're detecting more than a bit of cynical sarcasm in my voice, it's because, wow, this one's a little out there even for me. I'm an avid enjoyer of a good conspiracy theory, but yeah, this one doesn't hold too much water. It's mostly popular on Twitter, and if you check out the hashtag NASA hoax after this video, you can scroll through some good stuff in more detail. Believers of this theory claim that NASA uses wild special effects for photos from space, or their photos from inside rockets, and all their launches are fake. And I'll be honest, this one just seems like a lot of work for I'm not sure what kind of payoff. But the whole agency being a fraud, well, I don't know. For one thing, they've really committed to this bit for the last 50 years, if that's true. Another is that NASA does a lot more than just launching rockets, and the innovations they've made for their astronauts benefit humanity as a whole. For example, the satellites they put into Earth's orbit, without that you wouldn't have your phone, you wouldn't have GPS software, even just little things like the advancements in computer software, everyday stuff like memory foam, freeze-dried food, water purification technology. They did make all of these things, which aren't fake. So I'm not gonna outright say I think this conspiracy might be a little out of this world. Number 3, the 9th planet. Now this one's a fun conspiracy because it's totally out there. All the way up in the solar system. This conspiracy is of the doomsday variety, saying that there's a hypothetical 9th planet out there that's just waiting at the edge of the solar system, supposed to hurl all sorts of nasty asteroids and comets our way, like a sentient malevolent force of evil, and it's listen. And let me do my best to parse this one for you. A Wisconsinite named Nancy Leader claims that as a young girl, she was contacted by an alien race called the Zetans, who, not whatever. Leader claims that the Zetans contacted her when she was young and implanted her with an intergalactic, also to warn people about an incoming danger from Planet X. Whew, that's a whole lot of words. So what about this wild theory is true? Well, NASA has been researching the possibility of a 9th inside our solar system just outside of Neptune we haven't seen. However, no danger of this mystery planet hurling any comets at us. And number 2, secret life on Mars. In 1971, British philosopher David Bowie posed a question, asking, is there life on Mars? He also made some pretty bold claims about spiders on Mars and the red planet. One of the first bits of kindling for this fire of conspiracy was in 1976. A photo released from the Viking 1 and Viking 2 orbiters across Mars. There was something intelligent, alive on Mars that had made contact with humanity, or perhaps even ancient civilization built it, like that guy on the History Channel was always doing this. Aliens. I don't know his name. Unfortunately for all, later photos of the rock formation would show that, well, it was just a big rock. And the face on Mars was not much more than a mix of an optical illusion and the human brain's desire to see patterns that aren't there. Sorry. This wouldn't be the only time something like this happened though. In 2008, a similar phenomenon would be recorded, and everybody's heart would race when the Opportunity rover brought back a photo of what looked like a human. Unfortunately, similar to the face on Mars, this is just a rock formation taken at just the right angle. This could be the proof of Martians, but these were eventually discovered to just be remnants of gas that had cracked through ice on Mars's surface. So until the CEO of Twitter can get that rocket working and get somebody up there, seems like we've still got a way to go before we find that life on Mars. Sorry, Bowie. Number 1, the moon landing didn't happen. Total fake, right? That's it. That's the video. Never happened. Oh, okay. You want me to talk about it? I can do that. Yeah, no worries. Let's dissect it a little bit then. The US flag is flowing as if it's blowing valiantly in the wind, and there are footprints but no marks from the lunar modules. Now, all of this is presented as being totally irrefutable, but in actuality, there's answers for all of these. The glow of the moon washes out the stars, and the lunar module's mass was distributed much wider than any of the astronauts' boots, and therefore didn't leave any impressions. Is that legendary filmmaker Stanley Kubrick was commissioned by the US government to film the moon landing, a perfectly believable setting in space, so naturally he'd be the government's perfect choice. There are some who believe The Shining is secret. Even the infamous all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy thing on the typewriter is supposed to be a nod with the ALL spelling out A11. It's very crazy, like red tape stuff, and if you're really interested, this theory is documented on the internet, and regardless of the truth, wildly entertaining. Personally, I think Kubrick did film the moon landing, but because he was such a notorious and he served as the commander on Expedition X, a 6.5-month-long voyage, same pose. While he never said outright if he thought it was an alien or not, he did offer that he does believe there's intelligent life out there just waiting. Take a listen. Me. And get at him you should, alien. Story Musgrave is out there waiting for you. He's got stories to tell you and you can tell him some stories. Number 1. As far as we know, was never followed up or investigated further. So maybe the government was just tired of hearing about flying saucers for a bit and was like, yes, Cooper, yes, you totally saw some flying saucers. And Gordon was orbiting the Earth and returning home when he noticed a glowing green orb following behind him, which he described as looking ethereal. Now, whatever this ethereal glowing green orb was tracked on radar stations all the way down home down under in Australia, so it was a physical, tangible object, not some trick of the light, no squid boat here. Now, all of this would be a pretty strange set of coincidences as is, but when Gordon touched down back to Earth, he was ready for a press conference to entertain journalists, whether or not he believed in UFOs or any questions about flying saucers or that sort of hyper-advanced space-age technology. An envoy from authorities are afraid that people may think up God knows what kind of horrible invaders. We have to avoid panic. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into this little quote here from Major Gordon Cooper, but it sounds like he knows something about NASA higher-ups that they press down on stories and
are often dismissed with a joke about how the only people who believe in such things are crazy conspiracy theories are not as crazy as the government would have you believe. Luis Elizondo is one such man, 10 until 2017, where he apparently had access to the Pentagon's data on UFOs and had to interview Pentagon trying to get his program to be taken seriously, but that he was suppressed by other branches of the government, such as NASA, for fears that news of alien visitors would incite mass panic. Other government while still being able to make seemingly impossible, instant 90-degree turns. Other craft in 2017 in frustration at the refusal of the various branches of government to brief officials or the public on the multitude of UFO sightings they have collected over the years, and the government has tried to discredit him by saying that he had no assigned responsibilities for the AATIP. Public about a matter of public importance is disturbing, but unfortunately not surprising. Of all time, by hacking into 97 NASA and US military computers over the span of 13 months. He claimed that the reason for this behavior was to search for evidence of free energy suppression and any other potential cover-ups by NASA of UFOs or technologies that could be useful to the public. Once caught and arrested, there was a lengthy court case to determine whether or not he should be extradited to the United States to serve his sentence. The news focused mainly on the crime and the subsequent court case, so much so that not many people looked into whether or not he found any evidence of what he was looking for. But according to McKinnon, he did. While looking through NASA's computers, he claims that he came across a document titled Non-Terrestrial Officers. He looked at the document and found an Excel sheet containing the ranks and names of several unknown individuals and a sheet with tabs for material transfers between ships. He then searched records for ships with the corresponding names and found nothing, leading him to believe that the ships were part of a covert non-terrestrial initiative. After a lengthy court case, the United Kingdom decided not to extradite him to the United States, claiming that the crime was committed due to mental illness, and that sending him away would be a violation of his human rights. Is this really the case? Or did he find something in those computers that he was able to trade to the United Kingdom's government in order to avoid being shipped abroad? Number 3. The Challenger accusation. On January 28, 1986, NASA launched the Space Shuttle Challenger. It had 7 people on board, 6 astronauts and 1 teacher, who had been selected to be a part of the mission as part of NASA's Teacher in Space program. Their mission was to study Halley's Comet as it passed near the Sun, and to deploy a tracking and data relay satellite. Due to the novelty of a teacher in space, millions of school children were watching the launch in class when it occurred at 11:39 a.m. Tragically, 73 seconds into the shuttle's launch, Challenger broke apart, and all 7 passengers were lost. President Ronald Reagan created the Rogers Commission to investigate the incident. It was discovered that the cause of the accident was the rubber O-rings, which were supposed to act as a seal in the shuttle's solid rocket boosters, but had stiffened due to the cold of the day, causing them to be less effective in causing the pressurized gas to leak and burn through an attachment strut and the external propellant tank. The combined stress caused the shuttle to be torn apart. The investigation also found a few more details that caused some scandal for NASA. It was discovered that concerns about the O-rings had been raised by NASA engineers since the early 70s, but that NASA had deemed the component acceptable despite the engineers' protests and suggestions that further reinforcement be given to the rings. In 1980, the NASA Verification Committee requested further tests on the joints the rings were reinforcing to test how they would behave at different temperatures. A test that would have exposed the Challenger's fatal flaw, but the program managers decided that such tests were unnecessary. It turned out that other missions in the years between the request for more tests and the Challenger mission had had problems with the O-rings, with them showing signs of erosion or letting in soot, showing that they were not providing a reliable seal. NASA also claimed that all passengers had met their end instantly and without pain, but it was discovered that the astronauts had discovered their emergency breathing packs, showing that they were alive and trying to survive well after the initial explosion. A member of the commission, Robert B. Hotz, went so far as to accuse NASA of a cover-up in both the Miami Herald and the New York Times, saying that their initial statements about the astronauts and other actions by the space agency were part of a broad effort to keep the public from learning that the Challenger crew members might have survived the disaster if certain precautions had been taken. NASA denied such an effort, but as a result of the commission, NASA had to establish the Office of Safety, Reliability, and Quality Assurance to ensure that future missions did not neglect the safety of their crew in such a fatal way. Number 2. Life on Mars. One of the most common accusations against NASA is that they are covering up evidence of alien life on other planets, specifically Mars. While there are too many of these accusations to dive into in great detail, we will be looking at 2 in particular. Richard Hoagland is one of the many people convinced that there is evidence of ancient civilizations on Mars due to NASA photographs that were taken during the 1976 Viking 1 orbit. These photos show what has been dubbed by believers as the Mars face, a large sphinx-like object. In 1998, the Mars Global Surveyor sent photos of Mars's surface back to Earth, showing only a pile of rocks, noticeably lacking the iconic profile, claiming that it debunked the theory. Hoagland called this a load of baloney, and unearthed a NASA-commissioned report from 1960 recommending that any future discoveries of alien life be kept from the public so as to not disturb the evolutionary flow of the 20th century civilization. Nearly 20 years later, a researcher named Barry de Gregorio, who specializes in the study of microscopic life in Earth's soil, looked at photos released by NASA, and realizing how similar shapes and patterns in the photos were to Ordovician trace fossils he has photographed on Earth, claimed that the Mars pictures appeared to feature trace fossils made by soft-bodied life forms. NASA claims that the shapes are merely rock crystals which are being analyzed. The researcher claims that this is a cover-up, and that he is planning on releasing a report that will blow the lid off of the cover-up. He theorizes that NASA is covering the findings up to avoid jeopardizing their planned 2030 Mars mission. It is hard to say if Mars is or ever was populated by an alien race, but if they were, would NASA tell us if they found evidence once they got there? Number 1. The astronaut accusation. One of the leading causes of people who claim to believe in aliens and UFOs not being taken seriously is a perceived lack of credibility. If someone reports seeing a UFO, many people immediately assume that the person either saw an airplane from a weird angle, is lying, or is insane. Which is part of why it is so exciting when someone with a staggering amount of credibility comes out in support of the idea of alien life. Edgar Mitchell is one such person. Not only does he have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees as well as a doctorate in aeronautics from MIT, but he is also a former NASA astronaut who was the 6th man in history to walk on the moon as part of the 1971 Apollo 14 mission. In fact, he is tied with fellow astronaut Alan Shepard for the record of the longest moonwalk in history, having tread its surface for over 9 hours straight during his mission. Mitchell has not said how he knows this for sure, but he said in an interview in 2008, when asked about his opinion on alien life, that yes, there's not much question at all that there is life throughout the universe. I'm totally sure we are not alone. He went on to claim that he had intelligence that proved, quote, that we have been visited on this planet and the UFO phenomenon is real, though it's been covered up by governments for the last 60 years or so. In other interviews, Mitchell has confirmed the 1947 Roswell incident and has described aliens as harmless little people. When asked about the former astronaut's comments, NASA curtly replied, quote, NASA does not track UFOs. Dr. Mitchell is a great American, but we do not share his opinion on this issue.
Number 5. Bones on Mars. We are just desperate to find some proof of there being life on Mars. More than anything, we just want to know if there's anybody else out there with us. We want to know if there's aliens coming in from other galaxies, but I think more importantly, we want to look in our own solar system first. It'd be an awfully lonely galaxy otherwise. And while we haven't had a manned mission yet to Mars, thanks to telescopes and rovers, we've been able to get a pretty good look at the surface of it to better our understanding. Recently, a photo taken from the Curiosity rover reignited the search, and alien enthusiasts were excited when it looked like a photo of a human bone was taken from the surface of Mars. It shows a collection of rocks, half buried in dust, and one in particular immediately jumps out, looking like a femur bone, even possibly a human femur bone. However, excitement dwindled pretty soon when, like most cases, like the face on Mars and that statue that looked like it might have been a human woman on Mars, it turned out to be little more than a coincidence. The bone? Well, it turns out it's not much more than a rock that just happens to look like a bone, and our eyes and desire to see patterns where there aren't patterns can trick us all. It was shaped through erosion caused by the wind. Now, NASA is more than aware how much we're all jumping at the bit for proof of aliens, so they even issued a statement about this picture. If life ever existed on Mars, scientists expect that it would be small, simple forms called microbes. Mars likely never had enough oxygen in its atmosphere to support more complex organisms. Thus, large fossils are not likely. Now, it does bear mentioning too that the rock bone actually doesn't look, you know, exactly like a human femur when you really look at it, but hey, that's probably why we thought it was an alien after all. And if you're looking for more scary stuff from outer space, aliens, cryptids, SCPs, and way more, basically everything scary under the sun, toss a subscribe our way and stay spooked all night long. Number 2, cracking the glass. It must be so odd being in space, you know? Floating around in all that nothingness. Even weirder on a space station. You're out in the vast, unending cosmos, and you know that the only thing that's keeping you alive is being inside this box, and that the environment around you cannot support you at all. And you are lost in a sea of stars, very far away from home. I'm not sure how you could ever get used to calling that home. I've got nothing but respect for the astronauts on the ISS. That stuff would stress me out so much I don't think I'd ever get a good night's sleep. I would be way too worried at all times that all it would take is one little thing to go wrong and it would all be over. Well, the ESA, that's the European Space Agency, tweeted a photo out a little bit ago of a crack in the window of the ISS, which is a nail-chomping sight. The damage was caused by a floating piece of debris that collided into the observatory of the ISS, collided with the window. A flake of paint did that. If your first thought was, well, what about something ever so slightly larger, the ESA has the same worry, and has said that a piece of debris larger than 4 inches would be enough to completely shatter a satellite or a spacecraft wide open. That would probably prevent me from ever getting a good night's sleep, knowing that there's always a possibility something tiny could tear a hole open and have everyone sucked into space. Sweet dreams! The threat of space debris is a growing concern for NASA and the ESA and other space organizations, as debris keeps getting lost up there and isn't getting taken away. Nobody's taking out the cosmic trash. We've already messed Earth up pretty bad. It would be a galactic embarrassment if we trash up the stars. So next time they send some astronauts up there, bring a dirt devil or something. Maybe vacuum something up. Do your part. Number 3, dying star. When you're looking at a star, you're actually looking at a star as it was about 4,000 years ago. It's kind of out of date by the time you saw it. The speed of light very, very fast, but it's not that fast. You see, stars live for hundreds upon millions of years, so when we're looking at them, they're practically it. When a star finally croaks and kicks that celestial bucket, stomped onto the scene and stole the hearts and mind of the space community, the Hubble telescope was still the #1 name to trust in the big telescope community, captured as it was dying. And nobody did anything to help, you just watched it. It looks like a cosmic web, kind of like a fractal galactic spider web, and that's a great album name if you want to give that out there. It looks to me like staring into the eye of a Lovecraftian god, some being that's existence probably just as terrifying to even consider. Anyway, can't tell you too much more. Like I said, I'm no scientist, I'm just a jack-o'-lantern son. Hey, it's not just people who can dress up for Halloween. We've all seen dogs in hilarious Halloween costumes, and I'm not 100% that I actually know what any of these mean, but I'll say them anyway for you. The active regions are areas of greater light and energy that appear in SDO images to flame outwards from the sun. This one straight up looks like just a giant cosmic jack-o'-lantern. The lights form 2 eyes, it's got a little nose and a wide, jagged, smiling mouth. Kinda makes it seem like there was a giant cosmic pumpkin carving contest out there in the skies. I kinda wish we could get this permanent for like the months of October. Would love to look up in the sky and I see a giant face staring back at me like I live in Clocktown from Majora's Mask. Yeah, this isn't the scariest point on this list, I can admit that, but it's a darn good photo and I think that's worth showcasing enough, is it not? And I mean, really, imagine looking up into the sky and seeing that. At #1, that's no moon. Now what you're looking at right now is a picture of Saturn's moon Mimas. And I know what you're thinking, that's no moon, that's a space station, as the moon Mimas is a dead ringer for the fully operational Imperial Space Station. Now, while something looking like the Death Star is more than interesting enough to me, is caused by the sloshing of liquid ocean just beneath all together. The possibility that it can sustain life and that our solar, hopefully they didn't make the same engineering mistakes and there's no structural ports or what was it called? No, I'm embarrassing myself as a Star Wars fan. What he shot the torpedo into. We all know what I'm talking about. When Luke shot the torpedo in, it doesn't have that. That's what I'm trying to get at. Anyway, hopefully there is something hiding beneath that ice. I feel like that'd be a pretty good cosmic twist if we spent all this time thinking Mars is going to be where we found the aliens and then it turns out it's the Death Star, the thing from Star Wars where we find our alien friends. That's poetry.
Number 5. The NASA Photoshop cover-up. The most recent of the incidents on this list is the accusation from prominent UFO hunter Scott C. Waring that NASA is editing archival photos to remove alien craft in an effort to hide the existence of extraterrestrials from the people of Earth. As evidence of this, he posted a photo from the 1968 Apollo 7 mission that he claims shows a UFO on his blog, saying that the craft he saw in 2013 had been edited out of the photo by 2015. As he himself put it, "Guys, I discovered this UFO back in 2013 and NASA used my website to edit it out by 2015. Now I have found them in the US National Archives. They have accidentally saved the original Apollo 7 photo with the UFO in it. The photo in question shows a black object seemingly floating below the Apollo 7 spacecraft and above the planet. The supposedly edited photo does not show the small black object." Waring expressed his concerns in the following quote, "This is 100% proof that NASA used my discoveries and used photo editing software to edit out the UFO and then add a lot of contrast to the original photo to cover up most of the detail. Then, to top it off, they no longer have the largest 5 megabyte size to download, but instead only have a tiny thumbnail of about 200 kilobytes in size. Its reduced size and quality has destroyed its usefulness. NASA has to be stopped. This kind of cover-up is very corrupt and deceitful to not only the American public, but the world." Despite these claims, the black mark can be seen in other official versions of the photo, and according to analog film experts, they say it is likely just an imperfection in the photo negative. As they put it, irregular shaped dull marks or roundish spots on the surface of your film are likely to be drying marks, caused by the droplets of water forming in the film's surface during the drying stage. These marks are typically seen on the film backing. Films washed in hard water areas are more likely likely to see this problem. Is NASA really altering photos in their archives in order to cover up alien life? Possibly. Is this an example of them doing so? I'm not entirely convinced. Number 4. The space fireflies. During the race to the moon between the United States and the Soviet Union, one of the landmark moments of the race was the Mercury Atlas 6 mission, when American astronaut John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. As important as this moment was in the history of space exploration, it is better remembered by UFO enthusiasts for what Glenn saw out of his window during the mission. While Glenn was flying over Australia in the Friendship 7 capsule, he looked out the window and saw what he later described as fireflies. Upon seeing this, he radioed the following back to NASA Mission Control: "I am in a big mass of some very small particles that are brilliantly lit up like they're luminescent. They look like little stars." Glenn then tapped on the window, and the fireflies seemed to react and flew away. NASA was of course worried that this was parts of the capsule heat shield collapsing, but thankfully for Glenn, this was not the case. Because the mission wasn't being broadcast live, the firefly story didn't get much media attention, being somewhat of an urban legend. However, when the next American in space, Scott Carpenter, also reported seeing the luminescent particles, NASA had an excuse at the ready, saying that it was caused by ice particles from the condensation of the ship's heat exchanger. While to most this would sound like a plausible explanation, John Glenn maintained until the day he died that what he saw could not be explained by ice particles. What did John Glenn see out his capsule window during the 1962 Mercury Atlas mission? Was it really ice particles? Or is NASA trying to hide the truth from the people of Earth? Was John Glenn right? Is it a coincidence that multiple James Bond films were also directed by a man named John Glenn? We may never know. Number 3. Shuttle Atlantis' close encounter. In an age of internet and live broadcasts, it is getting harder and harder to prevent information from reaching the public, with it usually being only a matter of time before secrets find their way out of the shadows and into the light. Such is the case in our next entry, which happened in 2006 during the STS-115 mission of the Shuttle Atlantis to aid in the construction of the International Space Station. The shuttle and its crew had successfully completed its mission and had almost completed the trip back to Earth when Mission Commander Brent Jett looked out the window and noticed, as he put it, some kind of reflective structure. He radioed Mission Control and told them what he saw, telling them that what he was looking at, quote, "didn't look like anything I've ever seen outside of this shuttle, that's for sure." NASA was worried that whatever the object was, it might be some crucial part of the craft that had broken off. They took control of the cameras that were broadcasting the mission to try and get a look at what Commander Jett had seen. To the shock of all the cameras, it saw 3 bright objects in the sky. The information was picked up by the media, and NASA scrambled to come up with a suitable explanation. They ordered an inspection of the craft to see if it was a broken off part of the ship as they had assumed, but could not find any evidence of damage. When the ship returned to Earth, another inspection was ordered, but once again, no damage other than a small micrometeor impact was found. NASA has never been able to explain what happened during this mission, and seem to have made no effort at all to solve the mystery in the years since. Or do they already know what happened, and simply do not want us to be in on the secret? As disturbing as that prospect may be, it would not surprise me to learn that it is the truth. Number 2. Gordon Cooper's alien adventures. Gordon Cooper is an important figure in the history of space travel, having served as an aerospace engineer, a test pilot, a pilot for the United States Air Force, and being the youngest of the 7 original Project Mercury astronauts. He was the first American to spend a day in space, the first to sleep in space, and was the last American to go on a solo orbital mission, and set the space endurance record when he traveled 3,312,993 miles in 190 hours in 56 minutes, thus proving that astronauts could survive in space for the length of time that would be required to travel to the moon and back. He was an extremely important historical figure, but unlike many other NASA astronauts, he was not shy about talking about the various experiences he had over the years with unidentified flying objects, and the government's effort to cover these experiences up. Gordon Cooper claimed that he had seen his first UFO while flying over West Germany in 1951, but that his first experience with government cover-ups came in 1957 1967 while he was stationed at the Edwards Air Force Base in California. He had put a crew in charge of setting up an Ascania cinetheodolite, which is a photographic instrument used for collecting trajectory data of aircraft, missiles, rockets, and other similar equipment. The equipment was set up on a dry lake bed and set to take pictures at 30 frames per second as aircraft landed. The men later reported to Cooper that they had seen something odd and had captured images of a strange-looking saucer-like aircraft that hadn't made any sound while landing or taking off. The men were used to seeing experimental aircraft, but were unnerved at the sight of this saucer, which had hovered over them, landed about 50 yards away using 3 extended landing gears, but had taken off when they had approached for a closer look. Cooper called a special Pentagon number, which was meant for reporting such phenomena, and was told to have the film developed, to make no prints of it, and to send it to them in a locked courier pouch. However, as Cooper would later admit, they hadn't told him not to look at the negative before sending them out. He looked at them and saw incredibly high-quality images of the flying saucer. He had expected there to be a follow-up investigation, but never heard anything further. He tried to track down what happened to the images, but never found out, assuming that they ended up in the Air Force's Project Blue Book, which was the Air Force's official UFO investigation. He had to deal with more government concealment, this time from NASA, when he did his solo orbital mission in 1963. While being broadcast live on NBC, Cooper told Mission Control that he could see a glowing green object which was rapidly approaching his craft. The object was not an illusion and even showed up on radar, but when he returned to Earth, he was forbidden to talk about the experience any further with the press. The reporters brought in for the subsequent press conference for the mission were also told that they could not ask Cooper about the green orb either. Years later, Cooper would talk about this encounter more openly and discuss the fact that NASA and other government agencies were covering up several stories of UFO encounters. He even spoke to the United Nations on the subject, saying, "Authority is afraid that people may think of God knows what kind of horrible invaders. So the password still is, we have to avoid panic by all means." Did Gordon Cooper really see multiple UFOs during his life? And if so, did NASA and the Air Force prevent the public from learning about these visitors from another planet in an effort to avoid panic? Will there ever be a point in history where they trust the people of the world to be able to handle such news? Much like the identity of the flying saucer's pilots, it is unknown. Number 1. Did we even go to the moon? As we bring our video to a close, we must talk about one of the most popular NASA cover-up theories out there. While several people are convinced that NASA has come across evidence of alien life that they are keeping from us, or that they have even managed to make contact with extraterrestrials, there is still an inherent level of trust involved in those theories. The idea that NASA is covering up such evidence relies on the belief that NASA has really managed to send men to space. However, there are a significant number of people who don't even trust that this occurred, believing that man has never set foot on the moon. In the interest of fairness, let's explore this theory further. The gist of the theory is that while the United States and Russia were racing to see who could get to the moon first, the United States government built a set and filmed fake astronauts pretending to walk on the moon, broadcasting the footage across the world and effectively ending the space race in their favor. Some theories even say that famous director Stanley Kubrick was hired after the impressive special effects in his science fiction film 2001: A Space Odyssey caught the eye of the US government. He was apparently hired to direct the allegedly fake moon landing. The evidence that people have latched onto over the years include shadows in photos that don't line up how people think they should, claims that the astronauts could not survive the Earth's radiation field, the lack of stars in the moon landing photos, and the infamous American flag that they claim appears to be flapping in the wind despite the lack of wind on the moon. Most, if not all of this evidence has been explained by NASA, but once someone is convinced that the moon landings are fake, no explanation from NASA is going to convince them. Whether the moon landing is real or not, it is a good example of how the public's trust in a government institution can erode to the point where some people feel like they can't even take the most basic bits of information provided by NASA for granted. Number 5. The Brookings Report. In the year 1960, NASA's Committee on Long-Range Studies partnered with the Brookings Institution to create a report for the House Committee on Science and Astronautics titled Proposed Studies on the Implications of Peaceful Space Activities for Human Affairs. Not surprisingly, when talked about in general conversations between UFO and alien believers, it is referred to instead as the Brookings Report. Most of the report is not particularly interesting for the purposes of this list, with sections about the implications of a space-derived weather predicting system and the implications of technological byproducts. But there is a section of the report that has garnered much attention over the years about the implications of a discovery of extraterrestrial life. This section theorizes about how the public would react to the discovery of alien life, and how it would affect society, and how the decision would have to be made on whether or not such a discovery would be made public. Some choice passages are as follows. Anthropological files contain many examples of societies, sure of their place in the universe, which have disintegrated when they have had to associate with previously unfamiliar societies, espousing different ideas and different ways of life. Others that survived such an experience usually did so by paying the price of changes in values and attitudes and behavior. Studies might help to provide programs for meeting and adjusting to the implications of such a discovery. Questions one might wish to answer by such studies would include: how might such information, under what circumstances, be presented to or withheld from the public for what ends? What might be the role of the discovering scientists and other decision makers regarding release of the fact of discovery? While it is important to note that the report does not state whether the government should or should not cover up the existence of alien life should it be discovered, it does state that this is a choice that would have to be made. This report was developed relatively early in the history of space exploration and was presented to policymakers. So, we do know that people in charge of government policy were presented with a document that floated the idea of hiding the discovery of alien life from the people of Earth. I don't think the writers of the report were trying to hide anything, but the fact that a report featuring a section on what courses of action should be taken if, hypothetically, alien life were discovered, was commissioned makes me wonder if this was actually just a way to get the answers they needed without revealing the true implications of the report to the writers. Number 4. The astronaut accusation. One of the leading causes of people who claim to believe in aliens and UFOs not being taken seriously is a perceived lack of credibility. If someone reports seeing a UFO, many people immediately assume that the person either saw an airplane from a weird angle, is lying, or is insane. Which is part of why it is so exciting when someone with a staggering amount of credibility comes out in support of the idea of alien life. Edgar Mitchell is one such person. Not only does he have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees, as well as a doctorate in aeronautics from MIT, but he is also a former NASA astronaut who was the 6th man in history to walk on the moon as part of the 1971 Apollo 14 mission. In fact, he is tied with fellow astronaut Alan Shepard for the record of the longest moonwalk in history, having tread its surface for over 9 hours straight during his mission. Mitchell has not said he knows this for sure, but he said in an interview in 2008, when asked about his opinion on alien life, that yes, there's not much question at all that there is life throughout the universe. I'm totally sure we're not alone. He went on to claim that he had intelligence that proved, quote, that we have been visited on this planet and the UFO phenomenon is real, though it's been covered up by governments for the last 60 years or so. In other interviews, Mitchell has confirmed the 1947 Roswell incident and has described aliens as harmless little people. When asked about the former astronaut's comments, NASA curtly replied, quote, NASA does not track UFOs. Dr. Mitchell is a great American, but we do not share his opinion on this issue. Number 3. The MJ-12 documents. When John F. Kennedy was made President of the United States in 1960, he quickly developed a reputation of not being a fan of the intelligence community. He believed that certain information should be shared with the people they were governing, and perhaps even more surprisingly, felt that some information should be shared with their Soviet counterparts, in the interest of developing a relationship and de-escalating the Cold War in the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis. He apparently drafted and sent a memorandum in 1963, 2 weeks before his death, that requested that NASA initiate broader cooperation with the USSR in their outer space and lunar landing programs. Part of this document says that NASA would have to share classified UFO secrets with the Soviets. It has been claimed that the idea of sharing this information with an enemy state was the last straw for the intelligence community, all of whom apparently formed together to pool information and plans in a group called the Majestic 12, supposedly formed by President Truman in 1947 to deal with UFO activity. In documents that had apparently been saved from a fire known as the MJ-12 documents, it is stated that Kennedy has been making inquiries about the Majestic 12's activities that cannot be allowed. The document goes on to talk about how the issue should be handled, saying that when conditions become non-conducive for growth in our environment and Washington cannot be influenced any further, the weather is lacking any precipitation and should be wet. While for the layman this is more confusing than anything, it may be clear when you consider that wet work is a euphemism for It should of course be noted that official government agencies claim that these documents are forgeries, but it's not like an intelligence agency partially responsible for the death of a president is going to verify documents that supposedly implicate them. Was President Kennedy killed for trying to force NASA to share information on UFOs with the Soviet Union? If these documents are authentic, it would certainly seem to be the case. Number 2. Gordon Cooper's alien adventures. Gordon Cooper is an important figure in the history of space travel, having served as an aerospace engineer, a test pilot, a pilot for the United States Air Force, and was the youngest of the 7 original Project Mercury astronauts. He was the first American to spend a day in space, the first to sleep in space, and was the last American to go on a solo orbital mission. And he set the space endurance record when he traveled 3,312,993 miles in 190 hours and 56 minutes, thus proving that astronauts could survive in space for the length of time that would be required to travel to the moon and back. He was an extremely important historical figure, but unlike many other NASA astronauts, he was not shy about talking about the various experiences he had over the years with unidentified flying objects and the government's efforts to cover these experiences up. Gordon Cooper claimed that he had seen his first UFO while flying over West Germany in 1951, but that his first experience with government cover-ups came in 1957 while he was stationed at the Edwards Air Force Base in California. He had put a crew in charge of setting up an Ascania cinetheodolite, which is a photographic instrument used for collecting trajectory data of aircraft, missiles, rockets, and other similar equipment. The equipment was set up on a dry lake bed and set to take pictures at 30 frames per second as aircraft landed. The men later reported to Cooper that they had seen something odd and had captured images of a strange-looking saucer-like aircraft that hadn't made a sound while landing or taking off. The men were used to seeing experimental aircraft, but were unnerved at the sight of this saucer, which had hovered over them, landed about 50 yards away using 3 extended landing gears, but had taken off when they had approached for a closer look. Cooper called a special Pentagon number which was meant for reporting such phenomena, and was told to have the film developed, to make no prints of it, and to send it to them in a locked courier pouch. However, as Cooper would later admit, they hadn't told him not to look at the negatives before sending them out. He looked at them and saw incredibly high-quality images of the flying saucer. He had expected there to be a follow-up investigation, but he never heard anything further. He tried to track down what happened to the images, but never found out, assuming that they ended up in the Air Force's Project Blue Book, which was the Air Force's official UFO investigation. He had to deal with more government concealment, this time from NASA, when he did his solo orbital mission in 1963. While being broadcast live on NBC, Cooper told Mission Control that he could see a glowing green object which was rapidly approaching his craft. The object was not an illusion, and even showed up on radar, but when he returned to Earth, he was forbidden to talk about the experience any further with the press. The reporters brought in for the subsequent press conference for the mission were also told they could not ask Cooper about the green orb either. Years later, Cooper would talk about his encounter more openly and discuss the fact that NASA and other government agencies were covering up several stories of UFO encounters. He even spoke to the United Nations on the subject, saying, "Authority is afraid that people may think of God knows what kind of horrible invaders. So the password still is, we have to avoid panic by all means." Did Gordon Cooper really see multiple UFOs during his life? And if so, did NASA and the Air Force prevent the public from learning about these visitors from another planet in an effort to avoid panic? Will there ever be a point in history where they trust the people of the world to be able to handle such news? Much like the identity of the flying saucer's pilots, it is unknown. Number 1. The Pentagon accusation. When the subject of aliens or UFOs comes up with government officials, they are often dismissed with a joke about how the only people who believe in such things are crazy conspiracy theorists. But every once in a while, a government employee will come forward and make claims that such theories are not as crazy as the government would have you believe. Luis Elizondo is one such man. Luis was the head of the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program from 2010 until 2017, where he apparently had access to the Pentagon's data on UFOs and had to interview military eyewitnesses of UFO phenomena on a near-daily basis. He claims that he spent much of his time at the Pentagon trying to get his program to be taken seriously, but that he was suppressed by other branches of the government, such as NASA, for fear that news of alien visitors would incite mass panic. Other government personnel who tried to keep him quiet apparently did so out of religious reasons, with one claiming that he should stop pursuing UFOs and instead read his Bible, as such craft were probably demons. Elizondo has described seeing footage of crafts that have been able to reach speeds of up to 11,000 miles per hour, while still being able to make seemingly impossible instant 90-degree turns. Other craft have apparently been capable of flight with no visible means of propulsion, meaning that whoever is piloting these craft is in possession of technology generations more advanced than any currently found on Earth. Luis left his position in 2017 in frustration at the refusal of the various branches of government to brief officials or the public on the multitude of UFO sightings they have collected over the years, and the government has tried to discredit him by saying that he had no assigned responsibilities for the AATIP, but this was challenged when former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid released a statement that Elizondo was indeed in a leadership role in the ATIP program. The fact that the government is working so hard to discredit someone who is trying to inform the public about a matter of public importance is disturbing, but unfortunately, not surprising.
Number 5. The training is brutal. When you were young, did you ever dream of being an astronaut? I think most of us did. You know, dreaming of being a cosmic sailor, soaring through the Milky Way. I know I certainly did. I thought about how I'd ace the training. I'd be the perfect astronaut. I'd be this golden-haired hero of space, like a Luke Skywalker or a guy on an old pulp novel cover or something. Well, the movies and the media makes being an astronaut out to being a lot more glamorous and a lot easier than it is. I mean, we saw Homer Simpson do it and we figured we all could. But the truth is, they really do not take just about anybody. You already need to be a brilliant scientist and have an exceptional, spotless military career. So they're not just taking anybody, they are taking the best of the best of the best, the top 1% of the 1%. And they need people who can withstand incredible tolls on their body and are able to handle any problem that could be thrown their way in space. Turns out going to space, not that easy. These physical tasks include things like wilderness survival training, spending days surviving alone in the wild, on the off chance that your ship crashes on re-entry in the middle of nowhere and you need to be able to fend for yourself before rescue comes. As well, training includes things like swimming laps in a 200-pound spacesuit or spending literally 24 hours in a row submerged underwater to stimulate the feeling of floating around in a giant suit. Or how about taking a trip on the infamous Vomit Comet, the plane that flies in parabolas to induce weightlessness and zero gravity to get your body used to floating around before you do it for real, and more often than not has astronauts tasting what they had for lunch one more time. That's about the most pleasant way I can think to say that. That doesn't quite sound like the fun, carefree adventure I dreamed of as a kid. And if you're looking for more scary stories, strange space stories, UFO sightings, we have got plenty of that and way more on Top 5 Scary. Plus, just about everything scary you could ever think of above the sun and below it. So tap that bell and stay subscribed and don't miss a single scream. Number 4, it destroys your body. Even if you are one of those best of the best of the best who can handle the brutal training that thins out the herd, once you actually do get up into space properly, just existing ravages your body in all sorts of fun, terrifying ways you've never thought of. When you think about it, we really are not meant to be up in that environment. It's kind of like a fish trying to survive on land. So it's not much of a surprise that our body kind of reacts violently poorly to the new conditions. Here's a terrible one I bet you didn't know about. I bet you didn't know that astronauts' gloves are so tight and sealed that when they take them off, I'm actually gonna gag, astronauts lose their fingernails. They get pulled like right off, and frequently they break and sprain their fingers just taking their gloves off. Or maybe you didn't know that most astronauts, after entering zero gravity for the first time, vomit almost immediately, even if they've had tons of training and simulator experience. And this is not made better at all because, you know, where is that vomit going? It's just floating around you for everyone to see. Literally just being alive in space is bad for your body. You can just be sitting, vibing by the window, and it's gonna do damage to you. Astronauts who spend extended time in a space station report a huge loss of bone density, reporting horrible creaking and pains. They even shrink a little bit. Some astronauts note that when they got back to Earth, their spine had to straighten back out in an incredibly painful process. But when asked what the worst part of space life is, one astronaut, Tim Peake, responded saying, "It's watching the soles of your feet disintegrate. I am gonna do my level level best to explain this next thing to you without vomiting, but I cannot promise anything. He described that because astronauts use their feet so rarely in space, their soles start to soften like a newborn baby's. And the feet gradually force off all the dead skin and calluses that you build up over a lifetime of walking. Meaning sometime the cabin with a lifetime of dead skin flakes and big chunks of foot floating around the space station like the literal most disgusting snow globe imagined to be put through the absolute ringer when you find yourself with a career floating up in the stars. Your mental faculties need to be sharper than anyone and able to deal with anything that could possibly get thrown at you as you're floating up miles away from home. No, astronauts report feeling a wide array of mental health struggles, reporting that the isolation, mood swings, concentration issues, and some even getting full-blown PTSD upon returning back to the Earth. But, I mean, I get it. Imagine the workload. Imagine working a grueling day, not just any regular day. A day where if your work goes wrong, you could lead to one of or many of your teammates' deaths, and then having to go to sleep in a cold space station away from your loved ones. You can't even go home about it. You gotta go home to space. Sleeping on a space station is far from a cozy night in a crib either. For one, there's constant noise all around you on a space station. Nobody can hear you scream in space, that much is true, but everybody can hear all the engines and computers and all that stuff going off inside the space station, meaning there's never a quiet moment. It's flashing lights all over the station from the machinery, but as well lights that are thought to be caused by cosmic rays passing through your eyelids. As well, there's also, you know, no gravity. They definitely tell you that. Imagine having to, and I put this at number 2 and you'll all understand in a second. Just know I'm a child and I have the sense of humor of an 8-year-old. When you compare all the physical and mental danger astronauts have to face, is going to the toilet scarier than the risk of death? It honestly sounds like it. Peggy Whitson is an astronaut who holds a ton of records. Foremost, she's got the record for the most time spent in space, spending nearly 2 full years in orbit. She's spoken out and said that her least favorite part of living in space is the bathroom. Now, number 1 is considered to be a little easier, but it does not sound enjoyable in any way. A little hose, you attach it and it sucks the urine out, and then a machine converts that into drinking water because, yeah, astronauts drink a lot of their own pee. Now, admittedly, it's heavily processed, okay? You're not getting it out of the water cooler, it's not coming out yellow. But on a spaceship, water is sacred. Much like the still suits of Arrakis, all liquids and fluids are recycled. The water you wash your hands with, excrete, or spit out brushing your teeth, all of that is collected, processed, recycled to be drank again. Try not to think about that too much. Every astronaut you've ever seen on the news has drank so much pee. Astronauts have to fill a glorified porta potty pit and then put on a special rubber glove and pack it down nice and compact to be processed. But in zero gravity, things happen, and more often than any astronaut would ever care to admit, sometimes the mission goes a bit bad. Chris Hadfield said his crew would refer to these incidents as brown trouts. I'm not going to explain it, I think you understand. Leroy Chow, retired astronaut, spoke on his time on the station and said sternly that everyone cleans up their own mess when it happens, but he didn't elaborate on what that meant, but you can read through the lines pretty easy. When you were a little kid dreaming about life in space, did you ever consider that the world's best and brightest minds would be putting on the poop glove to catch brown trouts? And I am so sorry for the mental image I have given you. Number 1, danger. And above all else, if it hasn't been made exceedingly clear yet in this video, the life of an astronaut is not an easy one and oftentimes is extremely dangerous, with anything being able to go wrong spelling a certain disaster. Everything needs to be perfect. Now, you could look up countless stories of astronauts in danger, but I'm going to share one from Chris Hadfield because he's a Canadian icon. He spoke to BuzzFeed News about how on his first flight ever, he and fellow astronauts had to navigate a £250,000 space station towards a target the size of a coffee cup on the Russian Mir space station. Hadfield was there to relay the speed and range information to the pilot as they were pulling in for a docking maneuver, which had to be incredibly precise. In Hadfield's own words, if you hit the Mir too soft, the spring mechanisms bounce you off. If you hit the Mir just a little bit too hard, well, then you risk breaking the station in half and ending the lives of everybody on board. So you've got to hit it exactly right. No pressure or anything. When the shuttle crew was about 30 feet away, two sensors started telling them two different things. One of them said that they were at 32 feet away, and the other one said 20 feet away. Hadfield said, they're either both wrong or one of them is completely wrong. Now what do? There's nobody to ask, and if the crew on board this shuttle doesn't solve this problem in the next 30 seconds, then this is it for everybody. Hadfield described using his thumb to try and measure the distance from the window. This told him they were about 21 feet away, and he used a stopwatch to try and do the math to figure out how fast they were going, and when they should fire thrusters. And well, since I mentioned, Chris Hadfield is a national hero and not a national tragedy, we know they did end up hitting the target at the correct speed, even with 3 seconds to spare. Hadfield said the shuttle crew didn't even say a word until a few minutes after, when the shock had finally worn off, and one of the members of the crew said, "Hey, we did it, we're actually here." It goes to show that astronauts need to be razor sharp to be able to think on the fly like that, and really do need to be the best of the best to handle what they do up there. Number 5, the wow signal. We want so badly for aliens to talk to us. We want that more than anything. We've been looking for any sign, no matter how small, that there's intelligent life out there just waiting to come find us. And we will take just about anything at this point. A text, an emoji, maybe just a wow. Wow. Well, we might have already had that. See if you get wowed by the story of the wow signal. And can we throw just one Owen Wilson wow in here? Just for me, just for me. Wow. In 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio picked up a mysterious signal that lasted for 72 seconds. This signal was so strong and unusual that the astronomer who was watching it wrote "wow" on the printout. No, the aliens didn't send wow, but that would have been way better. This became known as the wow signal, and it remains one of the most interesting pieces of evidence out there in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Now, this signal was detected by the Big Ear radio telescope, which was up there in space looking for radio signals as part of the SETI program. We've talked about that before on the channel. It stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The signal was very strong and appeared to be coming from a point in the sky near the constellation Sagittarius. I'm an Aquarius personally. The frequency of the signal was consistent with what would be expected from hydrogen atoms that had been accelerated to high speeds. See, I don't know what that means. Despite numerous attempts to detect the signal again, it's never been observed since. This has led to much speculation about its origin and nature. Now, some scientists have suggested that the signal could be proof of extraterrestrial intelligence, some small sign. While there are others, Scullies of the world who might be doubting a little bit. Others have proposed more mundane explanations such as a natural phenomenon or a human-made satellite, but I think we would all deeply prefer it would be aliens. No, it would be a much more interesting end to the story. The wow signal remains one of the greatest mysteries in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It raises so many questions about the nature of our universe and our place in it. Will we ever solve the mystery of the wow signal? Could it really just have been Owen Wilson and we're radiating back that energy? We may never know. But if you're looking for way more mysteries about space, well, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. We've got more videos on space mysteries than there are stars in the sky. And if space mysteries aren't your jam, we got cryptids, conspiracies, true crime, just about anything freaky you can think up, we've done a video on it. So hit subscribe, hit that little bell as well if you're feeling so frisky, and make sure you don't miss a single scream. But, hey, do that at the end of this video for me, okay? We got way more space mysteries coming up for you right now. Number 4, the Great Attractor. The Great Attractor. I wish that's what they called me. That is not what they called me in high school though. Do you ever feel like you're being pushed through life, pulled towards a certain path you might not necessarily want? Well, talk to your parents and sort out your life path, but you could be feeling that way because the way our galaxy is being pulled towards something called the Great Attractor, which sounds a lot more ominous than it should, I think. That sounds kind of heavy, so let's get into this. What is pulling our galaxy and many others at faster speeds than you'd think? The Great Attractor is a mysterious gravitational anomaly located in the direction of the Centaurus constellation. It's exerting a gravitational force on our galaxy, where we live, where all our stuff is, and many other galaxies, and its exact nature and location remain uncomfortably unknown. The existence of this thing was first brought up in the 70s, when astronomers noticed that galaxies in our sort of galaxy neighborhood appeared to be moving in a direction that could not be explained by the gravity of nearby objects. Instead, they were being pulled towards a point in the sky in the direction of the Centaurus constellation. Pretty weird. Now, the Great Attractor is thought to be a massive cluster of galaxies, a big galaxy suburb, if you will, but its exact location and composition remain currently unknown. It's obscured by the Milky Way's dust and gas, making it kind of hard to get a good look at it and study. Astronomers have tried their hardest trying to map the distribution of galaxies, trying to determine its location and structure, but like I said, it's pretty difficult and not too much progress has been made. One of the more unsettling aspects of the Great Attractor I find is that it's located in a region of space known as the Zone of Avoidance. This is an area of the sky that's difficult to observe due to all that dust and gas like I mentioned before, and it's also what my therapist used to call my bedroom. Number 3, the Black Knight Satellite. The Black Knight Satellite sounds like it's something out of the latest Marvel movie where I think all the heroes and villains will fly up to have their big CGI smash them up. But it's actually the name of a mysterious object that is purported to be orbiting the planet and is host to some very colorful and fun conspiracy theories that we're going to dive into. The Black Knight Satellite conspiracy is a very intriguing and mysterious one related to what we got going on up there. It started back in 1954 when newspapers around the world reported that 2 US Air Force pilots spotted a mysterious object in orbit around Earth. If you follow those reports, the object was about 13,000 years old and appeared to be transmitting radio signals. Now since then there have been numerous alleged sightings and claims of radio signals received from the Black Knight satellite. Some conspiracy theorists believe the object is an ancient alien spacecraft sent to observe and monitor Earth from up high. Others believe it is some secret government satellite, or the really wild ones is that it's a remnant of a lost ancient civilization, the Anunnaki or something if you want to throw your hat into that conspiracy ring. There are, of course, many people who dismiss all of this as just misinterpretations of natural phenomena, which again, extremely possible whenever we're describing anything weird happening in space, but it is very fun to imagine and to play pretend, so we'll keep talking like that. The Black Knight satellite is capturing the imaginations of people who believe in it, and I think that's fun to talk about. There are some wild conspiracists who even say that the US and other governments have a big, like, secret cover-up about what really is going on there, if it's actually aliens watching from up high or a secret government surveillance project, who knows. Now, one of the more interesting pieces of evidence for the satellite is a series of photographs taken by NASA during the STS-88 mission in 1998. These photographs appear to show a large metallic object orbiting around the Earth, but no surprise, NASA has dismissed these claims, saying the object is nothing more than debris or a reflection from the shuttle's windows. So despite there not really being much evidence, the Black Knight satellite will continue to fascinate us and intrigue us. Number 2, the Dark Side of the Moon. Also known as The Far Side of the Moon, and one of the better Pink Floyd albums, and if you haven't set it up to Wizard of Oz, oh, you just gotta. The Dark Side of the Moon has been a source of fascination and mystery for space enthusiasts and the plot line of one of the worst Transformers movies. One of the worst Transformers movies, as if there's a good one. It's the side of the moon that is never visible from Earth, and as a result, we know very little about it. This lack of knowledge has given rise to all sorts of fun and crazy conspiracy theories, ranging from kind of plausible to totally nuts. One of the more popular ones is that there are alien structures or bases on the dark side of the moon. Maybe some like cool relics, like something out of 2001. Some conspiracy theorists believe that NASA and other space agencies have been covering up evidence of all these things, pulling the wool over our eyes. Again, this is literally the plot of the third Transformers movies, where there was Decepticons on the moon. It's around when they started getting really crazy. Conspiracists point to anomalies in photographs taken by missions to the moon, such as the Apollo missions, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, as evidence of these secret alien going-ons on the dark side of the moon. Another theory, and an insane one, is that the moon holds ancient artifacts or evidence of a long-lost civilization. Some people believe that these artifacts could hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe, or even provide evidence of alien life. Now, if we really want to get out there, some conspiracy theorists believe that there are dark forces or malevolent entities lurking on the dark side of the moon. We're talking like ethereal shadow creatures, old gods that would have kept H.P. Lovecraft up at night. And these things could be responsible for all the unexplained phenomena, or UFO sightings or mysterious goings-ons in space that we can't explain. It's all old tentacle gods up on the dark side of the moon. Or it could be perfectly explainable. Explainable? Or it could be perfectly explainable. One of the two. They don't hire me for my intellect, I'll tell you that much. They don't hire me for my brain. They hire me because I say words into a camera. And I don't even do that right sometimes. Number 1, space snakes. I've talked about Story Musgrave a few times on this channel, and I'll probably do it again. Namely because his name is Story Musgrave. That is a wild name for an astronaut to have. That's like a Star Wars guy name. Maybe it's fitting then that this man so vehemently claims that he's run into aliens before. Story is, if you'll pardon this pun, a very storied individual who's been to space multiple times and is now an Imagineer at Disney. So I feel like if aliens were going to appear to anyone as an envoy, it would be an astronaut with ties to the most powerful corporation on Earth. Musgrave is a well-respected astronaut. He's been to space 6 times and he spent 1,200 hours in space, so he might know a thing or two. So when he says he's seeing aliens, we prick our ears up a little bit. According to Musgrave, he saw space snakes that were long black objects that looked like they were swimming around in space. He described them as being about 3 to 4 feet with a metallic sort of biomechanical appearance. Think like H.R. Giger's Alien. And he said he saw these things multiple times. NASA has not really commented on this. They didn't put out a press beacon where they said yay aliens or nay aliens. They just kind of ignored it altogether. Now some experts suggested space snakes could have been debris or ice particles that were reflecting light, while others, and I think this is kind of fun, suggested that it could have just been a hallucination caused by the effects of space flight on the human brain. I feel like that particular brand of skepticism is not one you ever hear much when decrying UFO or alien sightings. We never just say, oh, he was probably hallucinating.
Number 5. Aliens on the Sun? In December 1995, the joint NASA ESA Solar and Heliospheric Observatory Mission, or SOHO for short, was launched in an effort to study the Sun so that we could learn more about it. SOHO has allowed us to study the Sun inside out, helping us to learn about its internal structure, its extensive outer atmosphere, and the powerful solar winds that blow across our solar system. SOHO was integral in proving once and for all that the Sun does not in fact wear a giant pair of sunglasses, as has been implied by several children's art projects. SOHO captures images across several different spectrums of light, most of which are then made available for public consumption on the internet. Most of these images are pretty innocuous, but sometimes, someone will see something that can't be explained, proving that sometimes, staring at the Sun can be beneficial. A UFO enthusiast was looking at the photos of the Sun and noticed a black square of the photo cut out. At first, he thought it was a technical issue, until he looked into it more. Here's the story as he related it. On June 28th, I found what looked like a mistake in the photo, but looks more like a black cube that is in orbit around our Sun. Sure, one photo mistake, right? Wrong. NASA and SOHO have the most advanced telescopic equipment available. For a cube to be missing from the photo, either it was cut out by NASA to hide something, or is it a flying cube in orbit around the Sun? Crazy? I think not. How often do you look directly at the Sun? Never, because it will damage your eyes. So it would go unnoticed. However, scientists around the world have stated there are UFOs orbiting the Sun many times larger than the Earth. I have recorded 3 instances of this cube flying around in different positions this month. For a long time, it was assumed that these squares were simply a computer glitch, but 4 years later, the squares showed up in a photo again. But the idea that this was a technical issue was called into question when separate UFO enthusiasts came forward with photos from a different SOHO camera that showed the square in the same spot. Is there a cube-shaped UFO orbiting the Sun? Or is NASA editing out something from the photos before releasing them? If there is something there, what are they trying to accomplish by hiding it? Number 4. Neil Armstrong's alien encounter. On July 20th, 1969, history was made as the Apollo 11 lunar module landed on the Moon, allowing its crew members, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, to become the first humans to ever walk on the Moon. It was a landmark day for humanity, and Neil's first steps on the Moon were broadcast on television, where it was witnessed by over 650 million viewers. During his moonwalk, he had access to 2 radio channels. One that would let everything he said be broadcast both to television and Mission Control, and another that would allow him to speak only to Mission Control. At some point in the moonwalk, Armstrong switched over to his private channel. When asked in later years why he had switched to his private channel and what was said, Armstrong said, "I have no comment on that, and am uncomfortable discussing the topic in any further detail." During the time that the radio communication was unavailable to the public, several amateur ham radio enthusiasts managed to tune in to the private channel. The following quotes from the incident have been corroborated by hundreds of unrelated operators who were all tuned in at the time. "I say that there were other spaceships. Those are giant things. No, 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 this is not an optical illusion. No one is going to believe this. They're here, under the surface. We saw some visitors. They were here for a while, observing the instruments. I say that there were other spaceships. They're lined up in the other side of the crater. My hands are shaking so badly, I can't do anything. Film it. God, if these cameras have picked up anything, what then? I didn't have any film at hand. 3 shots of the saucers, or whatever they were, that were ruining the film. They've landed here. There they are, and they're watching us." In the years since, this was denied by Armstrong and NASA, but Buzz Aldrin did say there was at one point an unknown object tracing their path to the moon. Were some of the over 650 million beings watching the moon landing visitors from another world? We may never know for sure. Number 3. NASA cutting the live feed. Another of NASA's crown jewels is the International Space Station, which, as the name suggests, was built with the collaboration of other countries in an effort to collect data and therefore raise our understanding of the universe and our place in it. The International Space Station broadcasts a live stream that anyone on the internet can watch. But sometimes the feed is lost. Sometimes this feed going down feels somewhat convenient. On July 9th, 2016, the live feed showed a bright glowing object falling into view of the camera. Just as the object is about to get into a more viewable position, the feed dropped, and a message came on screen claiming that technical issues had caused the feed to cut out. One YouTuber grabbed the footage and uploaded it. In the caption of the video, he states that it wasn't necessarily an alien craft and very well could have been a meteor, but the fact that the feed was cut just before the camera could broadcast a clear look was inherently suspicious. A spokesperson for NASA came forward, saying the feed being cut was not a deliberate act, explaining that the station regularly passes out of range of the tracking and data relay satellites used to send and receive video, and telemetry from the station. For video, whenever we lose signal, the cameras will show a blue screen or a preset video slate. This explanation, of course, did little to appease the people of the internet, who had already decided that the feed was cut in an intentional effort to prevent the regular people of Earth from learning about visitors from another planet. But as far as explanations from government agency goes, this is one of the better ones I've heard. Number 2. The MJ-12 documents. When John F. Kennedy was made President of the United States in 1960, he quickly developed a reputation of not being a fan of the intelligence community. He believed that certain information should be shared with the people they were governing, and perhaps even more surprisingly, felt that some information should be shared with their Soviet counterparts in the interest of developing a relationship and de-escalating the Cold War in the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis. He apparently drafted and sent a memorandum in 1963, 2 weeks before his death, that requested that NASA initiate broader cooperation with the USSR in their outer space and lunar landing programs. Part of this document says that NASA would have to share classified UFO secrets with the Soviets. It has been claimed that the idea of sharing this information with an enemy state was the last straw for the intelligence community, all of whom apparently formed together to pool information and plans in a group called the Majestic 12, which was supposedly formed by President Truman in 1947 to deal with UFO activity. In documents that had apparently been saved from a fire known as the MJ-12 documents, it is stated that Kennedy has been making inquiries about the Majestic 12's activities that cannot be allowed. The document goes on to talk about how the issue should be handled, saying that when conditions become non-conducive for growth in our environment, and Washington cannot be influenced any further, the weather is lacking any precipitation, and it should be wet. Well, for a layman, this is more confusing than anything. It may be clear when you consider that wet work is a euphemism for assassination. It should of course be noted that official government agencies claim that these documents are forgeries, but it's not like an intelligence agency partially responsible for the death of a president is going to verify documents that supposedly implicate that same government agency. Was President Kennedy killed for trying to force NASA to share information of UFOs with the Soviet Union? If these documents are authentic, it would certainly seem to be the case. Number 1. The Apollo 8 confirmation. The original goal of the 1968 Apollo 8 mission was to be the first craft to leave low orbit and fly in an elliptical medium Earth orbit. JFK had challenged NASA to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, and that deadline was fast approaching. So, in order to make the most of their opportunities, NASA made a bold call and decided that rather than settling for medium Earth orbit, they would instead quite literally shoot for the moon, which they would then orbit before returning home. Apollo 8 launched on December 21st, 1968, and reached the moon on Christmas Eve. Millions watched as astronauts Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders made their orbit of the moon. Despite NASA having a reputation for planning everything down to the minutiae, the plans for this broadcast were surprisingly loose. As Borman recalled, "We were told that on Christmas Eve we would have the largest audience that had ever listened to a human voice, and the only instructions that we got from NASA was to do something appropriate." The astronauts chose to take turns reading from the book of Genesis while their craft made 10 orbits around the moon. As Lovell later said, "The first 10 verses of Genesis is the foundation of many of the world's religions, not just the Christian religion. There are more people in other religions than the Christian religion around the world, and so this would be appropriate to that, and that's how it came to pass." With the more sentimental aspects of the broadcast complete and their mission a success, it was time for the astronauts to come home. Mission Control waited anxiously as Christmas Eve turned into Christmas Day to find out if the engine burn for the craft to leave their lunar orbit had worked. Word soon came from Jim Lovell confirming not only that the ship was on its way home, but something else as well. Lovell's radio communication stated, "Roger, please be informed there is a Santa Claus." In all the hubbub concerning the first lunar orbit, this news seemed almost like an afterthought. But the fact that a NASA astronaut confirmed that not only is Santa real, but that he lives on the moon is astounding. NASA never followed up on this information publicly, but what else have they learned since then? Are the legendary elves really moon people? Is the workshop located on the dark side of the moon? This is yet another example of NASA giving us bites of information that raise more questions than they answer. Number 5. Music on the moon. In May of 1969, man had not yet set foot on the moon, and the United States and the Soviet Union were still locked in an expensive race to see who could get there first. Before the Apollo 11 mission could take Neil Armstrong to the moon's surface, where he could utter the famous words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," there was one more mission to complete. The crew of the Apollo 10's mission was to fly in orbit around the moon and launch its lunar module, which would go 15.6 kilometers above the moon's surface before returning to the main ship and returning to Earth. The mission was considered a dress rehearsal for the moon landing that would occur 2 months later in July of 1969. A last chance to iron out any kinks so that there would be no surprises on the big day. But the crew was in for a surprise no one saw coming. Music from another world. While the ship was making its orbit, it made its way over to the dark side of the moon. For an hour, the astronauts would be out of contact with Mission Control and would have to fend for themselves. Once out of contact with Earth, they began to hear strange whistling sounds coming in on their radio that they could not explain. The noise and their reactions to it were recorded, and once they were back in contact with Mission Control, they filled their superiors in on the situation. Many theories were offered as to the origin of these sounds, such as magnetic fields or atmospheric interference. But these theories were debunked, as not only does the moon not have a magnetic field, its atmosphere is too thin to carry sound. This bizarre occurrence didn't interfere with the mission, and it was considered a success, which led to the Apollo 11 mission achieving the impossible and putting men on the moon. But the tale of this cosmic whistling was classified, and no one on Earth knew about the mysterious space music until decades later, when NASA's archives were declassified and made available for public access. What was this strange music? Was it simply malfunctioning equipment? Or was it a symphonic congratulations from the other species of the universe, welcoming humanity to the stars? We may never know. Number 4. The Black Knight. This next story takes us through time, from the late 1800s all the way to the late 1990s, giving more than a century of lore to this supposed satellite from an alien world. In 1899, the famous inventor and physicist Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments with radio. During one of his tests, he claimed to hear a strange transmission that he believed was coming not from Earth, but from outer space. If this is true, it means that not only is Tesla the namesake for a line of self-immolating electric cars, he is also responsible for making first contact with alien life through an orbiting alien probe that had remained undetected by humanity for thousands of years. A similar story came to light in the late 1920s, when the radio engineer Jörgen Hulse also claimed to have picked up a strange transmission that had echoed back to him after a delay. These long-delayed echoes, as they were later named, still do not have an official explanation, but many theorize that they originate from the same supposed satellite as the ones detected by Tesla years before. Similar stories began to crop up from multiple sources, including a science fiction author by the name of Duncan Lunin, who claimed to have decoded messages from the Black Knight satellite, which had revealed the existence of an alien race in the Epsilon Boötis, a binary star system in the Boötis constellation. In 1954, a UFO researcher claimed that the United States Air Force had reported that they had evidence of 2 satellites orbiting the Earth, an unusual claim since no country had yet come up with the technology necessary to launch a satellite. In 1963, an astronaut named Gordon Cooper reportedly called in a UFO sighting while making his 15th orbit during the Mercury Atlas 9 space mission. However, this incident is notably missing from the official NASA mission log. The seemingly biggest boon of evidence came to light in 1998 during the STS-88 mission to the still under construction International Space Station, where the first US module was delivered to the ISS, making it an important mission in the history of space exploration. During the construction, one of the astronauts saw something unusual floating above the Earth and managed to snap a picture of it. This photo was latched onto by believers in the Black Knight satellite as proof of its existence. But as they often do, NASA decided to be no fun at all and crap in everyone's oatmeal. NASA claimed that the photo most likely showed simple debris. Space journalist James Oberg, a man with possibly the coolest sounding job title ever, theorized that it was a thermal blanket that had been confirmed lost by the mission that had made its way into the atmosphere and gotten tangled up into a strange shape before eventually burning up. Is there a satellite of alien origin orbiting the Earth that NASA doesn't want us to know about? Or are all these stories merely a combination of technical issues and enthusiastic theorists? Perhaps this is something to debate in the comments below. Number 3. The Brookings Report. In the year 1960, NASA's Committee on Long-Range Studies partnered with the Brookings Institute to create a report for the House Committee on Science and Astronautics titled Proposed Studies on the Implications of Peaceful Space Activities for Human Affairs. Not surprisingly, when talked about in general conversations between UFO and alien believers, it is referred to instead as the Brookings Report. This section theorizes about how the public would react to the discovery of alien life, and how it would affect society, and how the decision would have to be made on whether or not such a discovery would be made public. Some choice passages are as follows. Anthropological files contain many examples of societies, sure of their place in the universe, which have disintegrated when they have had to associate with previously unfamiliar societies, espousing different ideas in different lifeways. Others that survived such an experience usually did so by paying the price of changes in values and attitudes and behaviors. Studies might help to provide programs for meeting and adjusting to the implications of such a discovery. Questions one might wish to answer by such studies would include: how might such information, under what circumstances, be presented to or withheld from the public For what ends? What might be the role of the discovering scientists and other decision makers regarding the release of the fact of discovery? While it is important to note that the report does not state whether the government should or should not cover up the existence of alien life, should it be discovered, it does state that this is a choice that would have to be made. This report was developed relatively early in the history of space exploration and was presented to policymakers, so we do know that people in charge of government policy were presented with a document that floated the idea of hiding the discovery of alien life from the people of Earth. I don't think the writers of the report were trying to hide anything, but the fact that a report featuring a section on what courses of action should be taken if hypothetically alien life were discovered makes me wonder if this was actually just a way to get the answers they needed without revealing the true implications of the report to the writers. Number 2. Why is NASA altering photos? NASA has a program called Picture of the Day where, predictably, they post a photo from their various rovers and satellites onto the internet every day for public consumption. One day in late 2014, the photo they posted was a picture taken by NASA's Cassini orbiter of Saturn's moons, Dione and Titan. It is a stunning photograph, but one internet commenter found something he did not expect when he downloaded and adjusted the photo. While adjusting the contrast and brightness of the photo, he found that it revealed a huge object behind one of the moons that was giving off a rainbow-like aura. Even more disturbing, he saw the photo had been altered with black markings covering whatever it was behind the moon, proving that NASA had altered the photo before posting it. He took his claims online where they started receiving some attention, but before long he received a comment from someone he was not expecting. The person who had edited the original photo. A NASA employee who explained that the photo was not edited to try and hide any alien craft, but to make up for the technical limitations of the Cassini orbiter as it photographed the two moons. As she explained it, Cassini takes color photos by snapping 3 sequential photos through red, green, and blue filters. In the time that separated the 3 frames, Dione moved, so if I did a simple color composite, I would be able to make Titan look right, but not Dione, or Dione look right, but not Titan. So, I aligned Dione, cut it out, then aligned Titan, and then had to account for the missing bits of shadow where the bits of Dione had been in the 2 of the 3 channels. While this does seem to be a plausible explanation as to why the photo was edited, the original poster remained skeptical. He believed it was possible that NASA had ordered the photo altered before posting it, and then released the explanation once they were caught. Of course, one could argue that if NASA had taken a photo that featured a UFO, and they didn't want the public to know about it, they could have just not posted the photo at all, rather than trying to Photoshop it out and hoping that no one noticed. Number 1. What is NASA hiding at the North Pole? In 2016, a researcher came forward claiming to have proof that NASA was trying to cover up something at the North Pole. He provided older satellite images that seemed to show some kind of crater or hole at the top of the Earth. He believed that this was evidence that supported the hollow Earth theory. The hollow Earth theory claims that underneath the surface of the Earth is more land, as well as a central sun located in the center of the Earth. The claimant says that these photos of a hole at the top of the Earth, first seen in satellite photos from 1968, may not be definitive proof that the Earth is hollow, but the hole's omission from subsequent satellite photos does prove that there is some kind of entrance at the pole that NASA is trying to hide. Many explorers have tried to reach this area hoping to prove the theory's validity, but many of them did not survive the journey, and those who did came back with stories that simply cannot be taken seriously. One group claimed that the hole was real, and that once they managed to lower themselves into it, inhabited by a small race of creatures. The explorers kept their distance but reported seeing some kind of factory in the distance that seemed to be running all throughout the day and night. Stranger still were the emissions being generated by the factory, as whatever was fueling it was giving off a smell not dissimilar to ginger. Not wanting to push their luck, the explorers took photos and came back the way they came, but when they checked their cameras, they found that some kind of magnetic interference from the pole had wiped their camera's memory cards. They came forward with these claims, and NASA firmly denied that their claims had any validity, saying that the explorers were simply mad or looking for attention. However, another government agency, NORAD, has been more forthcoming about what is happening at the North Pole, and released a report stating that it is a consistent site of UFO activity. Every year around the winter solstice, they've reported a small flying craft exiting the North Pole and traveling traveling around the world at super speeds, seeming to visit every country on Earth in just one night, before returning to the pole and not being seen again until the next year. What is this strange craft?
In 5th place, we have HD 189773b. Seeing as most of these planets today are only referred to with scientific labels, to make my life easier, I've made the executive decision to give them nicknames. HD 189773b will now be referred to as Snow Globe, purely based on my personal need to see this environment captured in a globe. On October 6th of 2005, a team of astronomers announced the discovery of Snow Globe, which was detected using Doppler spectroscopy. Real-time radial velocity measurements detected the Rayleigh-McLaughlin effect caused by the planet passing in front of its star before photometric measurements confirmed that the planet was transiting. In 2006, a team led by Drake Deming announced detection of strong infrared thermal emission from the transiting exoplanet by measuring the flux decrement, or decrease of total light, during its prominent secondary eclipse, which, for those of us who speak regular English, is when the planet passes behind the star. Well, that was a lot easier. The mass of the planet is estimated to be 16% larger than Jupiter's, with the planet completing an orbit around its host star every 2.2 days and an orbital speed of 152.5 kilometers per second. Wild. In 2008, a team of astrophysicists appeared to have detected and monitored the planet's visible light using polarimetry, and the result was confirmed and refined by the same team in 2011. They found that the planet albedo is significantly larger in blue light compared to in red, most probably due to Rayleigh scattering and molecular absorption in the red. The blue color of the planet was confirmed in 2013, which would have made Snow Globe the first planet to have its overall color determined by 2 different techniques. These measurements in polarized light have since been disputed by 2 separate teams using more sensitive polarimeters, with upper limits of the polarimetric signal provided therein. Okay, bear with my pronunciation of the big words, folks. I'm doing my very best here. Your girl is perpetually exhausted. The blueness of the planet may be the result of Rayleigh scattering, which I mentioned before. On July 11th of 2007, a team led by Giovanna Tinetti published the results of their observations using the Spitzer Space Telescope, concluding that there is solid evidence for significant amounts of water vapor in the planet's atmosphere. Follow-up observations made using the Hubble Space Telescope, a very popular telescope, confirmed the presence of water vapor, neutral oxygen, and also the organic compound methane. Later, very large telescope observations also detected the presence of carbon monoxide on the day side of the planet. Kinda dangerous. It is currently unknown how the methane originated, as the planet's high 700 degrees Celsius temperature should cause the water and methane to react, replacing the atmosphere with that scary carbon monoxide. Personally, I get irritable when the weather reaches like the 20s here on Earth, so I know I would not survive that oven at all. Nevertheless, the presence of roughly 0.004% of water vapor fraction by volume in the atmosphere of Snow Globe was confirmed with high-resolution emission spectra taken in 2021. I'm sure after all that fascinating information, someone out there is asking, but Alexa, why wouldn't NASA want us to know about this one? What's scary about it? The weather on Snow Globe is deadly. The winds, made up of silicate particles, blow up to 8,700 kilometers per hour, and observations have found evidence that it rains molten glass horizontally. See, I'm trying to, imagine sideways glass raining down, and I'm drawing a bunch of scary blanks. Personally speaking, that sounds cool to watch from a very safe distance, ergo the nickname, but not up close anytime soon. I don't need glass shards on my side. In 4th place, we have the darkest exoplanet known to date. TRES-2b was discovered on August 21st, 2006 by the Transatlantic Exoplanet Survey by detecting the transit of the planet across its parent star. The discovery was confirmed by the W.M. Keck Observatory on September 8th of 2006 by measuring the radial velocity of the star that hosts TRES-2b. Okay, alrighty, nickname time. I'm thinking midnight. The planet was identified in 2011 as the darkest known exoplanet, reflecting less than 1% of any light that hits it, and it is located 750 light years away from the solar system. I'm talking like worse than charcoal, or the Vantablack 3.0 paint in terms of reflection on the surface of midnight. The planet's mass and radius indicate that it is a gas planet with a bulk composition similar to that of Jupiter. Unlike Jupiter, but similar to many planets detected around other stars, Midnight is located very close to its star and belongs to the class of planets known as hot Jupiters. This system was within the field view of the Kepler spacecraft. This planet continues to be studied by other projects, and the parameters are continuously improving. A 2007 study improved stellar and planetary parameters. A 2008 study concluded that the TRES-2 system is a binary star system. Now, this significantly affects the values for the stellar and the planetary parameters. No one really knows why the planet is so dark. One reason could be that an absence of reflective clouds, such as those which make Jupiter so bright due to midnight's proximity to its parent star and the consequent high temperature. Another reason could be the presence in the atmosphere of light-absorbing chemicals such as vaporized sodium, potassium, or titanium oxide. What do you think? Let me know down in those comments. In third place, time to explore WASP-12. I'm sure you folks get the drill by now. I'm thinking. I'm sure you can see the steam pouring out of the top of my head right now. I've got it. Firefly. And no, that's not intentionally a reference to one of my favorite shows, but take it how you will. Firefly is a hot Jupiter. Ooh, that sounds familiar. And was discovered on April 1st, 2008 by the SuperWASP Planetary Transit Survey. Yeah, many folks originally thought it was a joke, but I assure you, it isn't. Hot Jupiters, or hot Saturns, are a class of gas giant exoplanets that are inferred to be physically similar to Jupiter, but that have very short orbital periods. The close proximity to their stars and high surface atmosphere temperatures resulted in their informal name, hot Jupiters. Firefly is the hottest planet ever found at a sizzling 2,250 degrees Celsius, as hot as some stars. Now, this find could challenge models of how close planets can be to their host stars. Firefly takes only a little over 1 Earth day to orbit its star, in contrast to, the 365.25 days for the Earth to orbit the Sun. Consequently, it has one of the lowest densities for exoplanets, which is inflated by the flux of energy from the star. On December 3rd of 2013, scientists working with the Hubble Space Telescope reported detecting water in the atmosphere of the exoplanet. In December 2017, researchers working on the HST announced that Firefly reflects just 6% of the light that shines on its surface. As a result, the exoplanet has been described as black as asphalt and pitch black. In second place, we have Gliese 667c. Let me know, by the way, if y'all are enjoying the fun little nicknames in the comments. It just makes it easier for my ADHD brain to know which is which if it's a fun name and not a mishmash of letters and numbers. For this beauty, I dub the Two-Faced. It resides a little over 23 light years away from here in the constellation Scorpius and was discovered in 2011 by American and European astronomers. Two-Faced is 4 times as massive as Earth, and it's very close to its star, only less than half the distance that Mercury is from our sun. It takes 23 days and 14 hours for it to complete 1 orbit around its star. Because of this, you would think that, this exoplanet is not able to host life because of its close proximity to its parent star. That's not the case here. Two-Face orbits around a red dwarf star, which is tiny compared to the Sun. That means that the Earth and this exoplanet are at roughly the same relative spot in their star's habitable zone. There's just one teeny tiny problem though. This exoplanet is tidal locked, which means it doesn't rotate on its axis. One side of the planet is always facing its star, and the other always facing away. The side that is always facing the star is so scorchingly hot that it would be impossible to live there, as it would melt you alive. Now, the other side that's facing away is so cold that you would instantly freeze. However, what makes this planet possibly able to support human life in the future is the narrow strip of land halfway between its hot and cold side that is just the perfect temperature to support life. But imagine stumbling home one night, you're totally out of it, so tired, and you lose your balance, and that's it. Either you freeze or you burn. It's a bit extreme. I'll stick with Earth. Finally, in our first place, we have Planet 9. Out of everything I've listed today, this is probably what's most likely to land me on some sort of watch list. Hey NASA, if y'all actually released the info you hoard on, aliens coming to Earth and what you've discovered, people wouldn't demand it as much. Planet 9 is the 9th planet in the outer region of the solar system. Sorry Pluto, I promise I'll make it up to you. Its gravitational effects could explain the peculiar clustering of orbits for a group of extreme trans-Neptunian objects that orbit the Sun at distances averaging more than 250 times that of Earth. These ETNOs tend to make their closest approaches to the Sun in one sector, and their orbits are similarly tilted. These alignments suggest that this undiscovered planet may be shepherding the orbits of the most distant known solar system objects. Based on earlier considerations, this super Earth-sized planet would have a predicted mass of 5 to 10 times that of the Earth, and an elongated orbit 400 to 800 times as far from the Sun as the Earth. The orbit estimation was refined somewhat in 2021, but the mathematical equation is it's too much for my brain to comprehend today. Konstantin Batygin and Michael E. Brown suggested that Planet 9 may be the core of a giant planet that was ejected from its original orbit by Jupiter during the genesis of the solar system, while others proposed that the planet was captured from another star, was once a rogue planet, or that it formed on a distant orbit and was pulled into an eccentric orbit by a passing star. Lots of fun theories to look through. Although sky surveys such as Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer and Pan-STARRS did not detect Planet 9, they have not ruled out the existence of a Neptune diameter object in the outer solar system. The ability of these past sky surveys to detect Planet 9 was dependent on its location and characteristic. Further surveys of the remaining regions are ongoing now, using NEOWISE and the 8-meter Subaru telescope. In 5th place, we have a 2014 secret mission in Africa. At the time, a NASA official confirmed that one of the agency's aircrafts had been spotted on an American military airstrip in eastern Africa, but like a series of US military officials, declined to say what the space agency's high-tech bird was doing there. Seriously, he gave the most legalese answer ever. Enjoy chuckling at this statement. I really can't give you any of the details. You know, the airplane was there, you see it in the picture, but I really can't tell you what it was for. A big from me. Anyone else? The broad-winged white plane belonging to the agency was photographed by the satellite company Digital Globe sitting next to some tilt-rotor aircraft at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. A NASA website that tracks the agency's 3 WB-57s shows that one of its planes, number 926, was on a foreign deployment from July to November of that year. A NASA handbook for the WB-57 posted online lists 14 international deployment sites for the aircraft around the world, but the American base that we just mentioned isn't one of them. The Pentagon declined to answer any questions about a NASA aircraft in Djibouti, and a spokesperson for the Air Force Space Command, which has a closer relationship with NASA, said they wouldn't have operational knowledge of a mission on the continent. AFRICOM, the US military's Africa Command, would only say that aircraft from a variety of agencies and nations perform diverse missions from Camp Lemonnier in support of the US and allied military peace and security operations in the region, which spans East Africa and the Mideast. A NASA spokesperson said that their WB-57 aircraft does a lot of work with a variety of different customers from the government, from industry, academia, including the Defense Department. Totally not suspicious at all. According to NASA's website, the WB-57s have been flying research missions since the early 1970s and continue to be an asset to the scientific community, with professional, reliable, customer-oriented service designed to meet all scientific objectives. A government website devoted to the converted old planes describes a mission in Costa Rica to explore the tropical upper troposphere and lower stratosphere, and another to collect cosmic dust from comets and asteroids in the Earth's upper atmosphere, among many others. A variation of the aircraft was used to gather air samples from above-ground nuclear tests conducted by other countries. Sure, only other countries. The military may be interested in more than just scientific objectives, since a plane can fly nearly as high as the famed U-2 spy plane and carry more weight, including an array of high-tech imagery and communications equipment. One previous mission was described by the head of the military's fringe tech specialists at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency to the House Subcommittee on Intelligence as a kind of mass, three-dimensional terrain mapping. She said that a WB-57 was deployed to Afghanistan for a few months beginning late 2010 and collected over 70,000 square kilometers of terrain data, so information on about 10% of the country. This expert said she was confident the system could have mapped half the country. So a civilian who worked with the WB-57 program in Afghanistan and who asked not to be identified due to, reasons, told some folks that the plane is highly customizable, using sometimes one-off configurations depending on the objectives of the project. And for now, the military isn't saying any more. And whatever the mission was, it appears to be over. According to NASA, all 3 WB-57s are now back in the US, with their status listed as inactive. Let me know in the comments what y'all theories are as to why the plane was mysteriously in Africa. My guess, another Area 51 or Roswell incident that they wanted to keep covered up. In 4th place, the alligator problem. I don't really like talking about things that, off me, with, alligators, crocodiles, sharks, and spiders being a few that make me skittish, but for the sake of information, you folks are worth it. The Kennedy Space Center is full of the scaly snappers. The center is located on Merritt Island, a small mass of land off of the east coast of Florida that isn't technically an island, but shh. Despite being the most famous landmark on the island, the NASA complex isn't the only thing there. There's the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, which is home to 1,000 species of plants and animals. They home a variety of sea turtles, manatees, bobcats, bald eagles, and more. Oh, and we can't forget about the gators. So maybe one of the reasons why the space shuttle program was canceled was because people didn't want to have to keep, clearing alligators off the runway every time a shuttle came into land. Honest to goodness. NASA has the ability to restrict human access to the site, should they need it, but how do you go about telling a man-eating reptile what to do? According to the agency, interactions between their staff and the gators is rare, but that's exactly what they would say. Next thing you know, they'll have hijacked a rocket. Okay, no. That was one thing I was very glad I didn't see when I took a vacation to Florida earlier this year, and I'd like to keep it that way, thank you very much. In third place, we have the theft and use of moon rocks. If anyone has ever read the book Sex on the Moon by Ben Mesrick, then you'll already know the tale of Thad Roberts and his plan to do something very interesting with a bunch of stolen moon rocks. And for folks like myself who didn't know until today, buckle in for something I couldn't make up if I tried. So Thad was a high-flying NASA co-op student with dreams of obtaining multiple degrees and becoming an astronaut. Oh, and he also had dreams of stealing some of NASA's most prized possessions. With help from a team of accomplices, Thad stole 101 grams of moon rocks, valued at a simple little $20 million from NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. For reference, that's slightly less than like half a cup for measurements, and that's about, $20 million. That's more money than I'll see in my lifetime. And hey, if that wasn't bad enough, he also pilfered some dinosaur bones from his university. As a newly minted dino fact expert, I tried finding out what dino the bones were from, but sadly my search has turned up empty, so I'm begging. If anyone out there knows, please tell me in the comments. Thad reportedly laid the rocks out on his bed and proceeded to get down and dirty with his girlfriend on top of them, hence the whole sex on the moon thing. The young man and his fellow thieves were caught in an FBI sting when they were trying to sell the other rocks and were sentenced to time in jail. Just when I think I've seen it all around here, I somehow find myself getting surprised. Boinking on space rocks? Oh, before I move on, during this theft, Thad contaminated the rocks, making them virtually useless to the scientific community. He and his buddies also destroyed 3 decades worth of handwritten research notes by a NASA scientist that had been locked in the safe. The absolute selfishness on display. In second place, we have Viking Lander aliens. A woman who claims to be a former NASA employee claims to have seen evidence of the most monumental cover-up in space history in 1979 as she saw 2 human figures in spacesuits walk calmly towards the Viking Lander across the Martian surface. So going by Jackie, she claimed to have been working for NASA, handling downlink telemetry from the lander, which was the first vehicle to send back images of Mars' surface. She and 6 colleagues were watching the Viking rover bustling about over various screens when she spotted, 2 men in spacesuits, which were not the bulky suits they normally used, but they looked protective. They came over the horizon, walking towards the Explorer. Now, naturally, some folks have claimed that the humans may have just been there to polish the lander's solar panels, and this is my judgy face. It seems a little odd, considering that if, there were humans there, presumably they could just fill the lander with petrol instead, or, take the photographs themselves, with paper taped over every crevice to avoid anything being seen. Hello, suspicious red flag alert. Yep, waving my imaginary one. Other theorists claim there were secret landings on Mars in the 60s, and the Apollo landings were actually a cover-up for wider exploration of the solar system. Nigel Watson, author of the Haynes UFO Investigations Manual, said that these accounts of secret space missions seem to be growing in number and remind him of the infamous Project Serpo. Yes, I'll sidetrack. In November of 2005, a contact called Anonymous, who said they worked for the US Defense Intelligence Agency, started sending information about an extraordinary alien exchange program called, Project Serpo. Basing his claims on a 3,000-page document written in the late 1970s, he boldly claimed that 6 aliens were recovered from the Roswell crash. Claims that aliens, living and or dead, were recovered from the Roswell helped to organize 12 specially trained people to visit his home planet. NASA has admitted that there are many things out there that we do not know about, and that UFOs are indeed real. So what else are they hiding? World War II, so bear with me while I talk about the Yahtzees and more. The Third Reich had built up a huge bank of scientists, engineers, and technicians over the course of World War II. A plan to rehouse hundreds, if not thousands, of former Yahtzee scientists in the US and put them to work on various projects. One such project was, you guessed it, the early days of NASA. He was transferred over to NASA in 1960, and in just over 2 years was named the first ever director of its launch operations center. Only one paperclip scientist, George Rickey, was formally tried for any crime, and no paperclip scientist was found guilty of any crime in the United States or Germany. Rickey was returned to Germany in 1947 to stand at the Dora trial, where he was acquitted. In 1951, weeks after his US arrival, Walter Schreiber was linked by the Boston Globe to human experiments conducted by Kurt Blohm at Ravensbrück, and to be safe, he immigrated to Argentina with the aid of the US military. In 1984, Arthur Rudolph, under perceived threat of prosecution relating to his connection as operations director for V-2 missile production to the use of forced labor from Middlework, renounced his US citizenship and moved to West Germany, which granted him citizenship. For 50 years, from 1963 to 2013, the Strughold Award, which was named after Hubertus Strughold, the father of space medicine, for his central role in developing innovations like the spacesuit and space life support systems, was the most prestigious award from the Space Medicine Association. On October 1st of 2013, in the aftermath of a Wall Street Journal article published on December 1st of 2012, which highlighted his connection to human experiments during World War II, the Space Medicine Association's executive committee announced that that award had been retired. Operation Paperclip remains a black mark against America's post-war activities, and NASA was unfortunately a part of it. It's a Nikki secret. one that doesn't get any easier to hear. In 5th place, we have Planet 9. So in April of 2016, the New York Post tweeted that a newly discovered planet could destroy Earth as soon as that month. Now, obviously we're all still here, unless we've been replaced by AI or holograms without my knowledge. Honestly, 2016 was the year I transitioned from high school to university, and 'twas a very chaotic year for me. The newspaper was referring to Planet 9, a theoretical planet at the edge of the solar system. Based on earlier considerations, this hypothetical super-Earth-sized planet would have had a predicted mass of 5 to 10 times that of the Earth, an elongated orbit 400 to 800 times as far from the Sun as the Earth. So expert astronomers have suggested that Planet 9 may be the core of a giant planet that was ejected from its original orbit by Jupiter during the genesis of the solar system, captured from another star, once a rogue planet, or that it formed on a distant orbit and was pulled into an eccentric orbit by a passing star. An accompanying video also claimed that the new planet would be throwing all sorts of asteroids and comets at Earth, which would supposedly end up pummeling our planet. Astronomers are actively looking for it to explain motions of some objects in the icy Kuiper Belt, a vast region of icy objects beyond Neptune. I tried to find a pronunciation for that word, couldn't find it, so if I'm wrong, let me know. And while sky surveys such as Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, otherwise known as WISE, and Pan-STARRS did not detect Planet 9, they have not ruled out the existence of a Neptune-diameter object in the outer solar system. When the planet is actually found, it will pose no threat to us, according to the California Institute of Technology's Mike Brown, who is one of the original backers of the Planet 9 theory. While it doesn't have an official moniker right now, it will likely be a name chosen from Roman or Greek mythology. Let me know in the comments what you think it should be, officially named. I personally think Dolos, the spirit of trickery, since NASA seems to want to keep this planet their little secret. In 4th place, we have the McMinnville UFO sighting. Widely regarded by UFOologists to have produced the most important photographs of a UFO, the McMinnville sighting became famous at the height of the 1950s UFO craze. Paul Trent captured the images on camera after his wife, Evelyn, spotted a slow-moving metal disc while feeding the rabbits on their farm. The images went on to be printed in Life magazine. The pair maintained that they had seen a genuine UFO until their deaths, repeating the tale for the Oregonian in 1997, year I was born. Now, before someone starts asking what this has to do with NASA, it absolutely has everything to do with them. They're the ones who cover up UFO sightings and proof. And if you remember, my last point, I'm pretty sure they have a hand in covering up government proof as well. Now, to elaborate on this event, Evelyn Trent started yelling for her husband at about 7:45 p.m. on the evening of May 11th, 1950. She was feeding the rabbits in the yard of the couple's Dayton farm when she saw what she described as a good-sized parachute canopy without the strings. Only silver, bright, mixed with bronze. She later elaborated that it was as pretty as anything she ever saw. Evelyn ran into the house, found her husband and their camera, and the duo raced back into the yard. Paul Trent also spotted what he described as a round, shiny, wingless object hovering in the sky. The 43-year-old farmer managed to take 2 photographs before the flying object disappeared into the evening mist. Fun fact, they're the most famous photos ever to come out of Yamhill County. The McMinnville Telephone Register and the Oregonian published the images in June of 1950, a month after Paul Trent took them. So the delay was because he had to finish off the roll before getting the images developed. Such a struggle sometimes. Life magazine followed the Oregon newspapers, offering its national audience, a gander at the unidentified flying object. Soon, because of this, a U.S. Air Force investigator came to the Trent farm, and while explaining the event to the officer, Paul said that the object was coming in towards them and seemed to be tipped up a little bit. He emphasized it was very bright, almost silvery, and made no noise. The investigator had heard such stories before, since once again, this was the golden age of UFO sightings. But while most alien craft tales are easily debunked after being discovered to be weather balloons or private planes or obvious hoaxes, that wasn't the case with the Trent's photos. In 1967, the Air Force commissioned prominent nuclear physicist Edward U. Condon to lead an exhaustive UFO study. The 950-page report, exhaustive, titled Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects, easily dismissed most of the reported sightings, but it stated at least one, showing a disc-shaped object in flight over Oregon, is classed as difficult to explain in a conventional way. The study determined that the photos were genuine and the Trents were truthful. It specifically declared that this is one of the few UFO reports in which all factors investigated from genetic to psychological and physical appear to be consistent with the assertion that an extraordinary flying object, silvery and metallic disc-shaped, tens of meters in diameter, and evidently something, flew within sight of 2 credible witnesses. So explain to me why NASA has never released a statement on this? They're keeping pretty dang quiet, and so was everyone else. What can I say? Secrets make me cranky. In third place, we have life on Venus. So back in the 1970s and 1980s, the Soviet Union sent several uncrewed missions to study the planet Venus. 10 of these Venera probes landed on the surface of the planet and were able to transmit data and images for a few minutes before succumbing to the planet's extreme atmosphere. In 2012, the Russian news service RIA Novosti reported that Leonid, I cannot say his last name but it starts with a K, a scientist who worked on the Venera missions, suggested that the photographs showed living objects moving around on the planet's surface. According to Leonid, certain objects resembled a disk, a black flap, and a scorpion, which emerge, fluctuate, and disappear, referring to their changing location on photographs and traces on the ground. The editors of Solar System Research published an editorial comment and a number of commentary articles from other scientists in their September of 2012 publication of Issue 5, Volume 46 of the journal, to be specific. The issue also includes a second article from Leonid, in which he claims to identify several other life forms and speculates regarding the apparent rich diversity of life around the landing site. It's a lot more rare to get alien spottings from folks outside of the US, and I feel like NASA is just out there covering them up. So I'm glad this one made it to the interwebs, even though folks have tried to explain it away. In second place, we have a government whistleblower. Alrighty. Before I get into it, I'd like to elaborate on how credible this story is. So, the whistleblower in question, David Charles Grush, is a veteran of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, and the National Reconnaissance Office, NRO for short, where he served as a representative to the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force from 2019 to 2021. From late 2021 to July of 2022, he was the NGA co-lead for UAP analysis and its representative to the task force led by the Department of the Navy, under the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. Whew. At the NGO, David served as a Senior Intelligence Capabilities Integration Officer, cleared at the Top Secret Compartment Information level. From 2016 to 2021, he served with the National Reconnaissance Office as Senior Intelligence Officer and led the production of the NRO Director's Daily Briefing. He was a GS-15 civilian, the military equivalent of a colonel, and has numerous awards and decorations for his participation in covert and clandestine operations to advance American security. I don't know about y'all, but I think this is our most credible witness yet. So David said the recoveries of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades through present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors. He said that craft recovery operations are ongoing at various levels of activity, and that individuals on these UAP programs have approached him in his official capacity and disclosed their concerns regarding a multitude of wrongdoings, such as illegal contracting against the federal acquisitions regulations, and other criminality and the suppression of information across a qualified industrial base and academia. Associates who vouched for David said his information was highly sensitive, providing evidence that materials from objects of non-human origin are in the possession of highly secret black government programs. Wow. Multiple government witnesses to boot. Although locations, program names, and other specific data remain classified, the Inspector General and Intelligence Committee staff were provided with these details. Analysis has determined that the objects retrieved are of non-human origin based on the vehicle morphologies and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures. The investigation was centered on extensive interviews with high-level intelligence officials, some of whom are directly involved with the program, and they corroborated his information. David is certain that the information has been illegally withheld from Congress to intentionally thwart legitimate congressional oversight of the UAP program. He has also filed a complaint alleging that he suffered illegal retaliation for his confidential disclosures. In his statements, David claimed that UFO legacy programs have, long been concealed within multiple agencies, nesting UAP activities in conventional secret access programs, without appropriate reporting to various oversight authorities. According to the unclassified complaint, in July of 2021, he had confidentially provided classified information to the Department of Defense Inspector General concerning the withholding of UAP-related information from Congress. Christopher Mellon, who spent nearly 20 years in the U.S. intelligence community and served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, has worked with Congress for years on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP for short. He has mentioned that a number of well-placed current and former officials have shared detailed information with him, including the location where a craft was abandoned and recovered. He claims the reason more folks haven't come forward is due to a lack of trust in the leadership of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, established by Congress. The assumption that the United States alone has bullied the other nations into maintaining the secrecy for nearly a century continues to uphold as the primary consensus amongst the public at large. So you're telling me that credible US government officials have been adamant that the government is hiding things? Sounds right to me. In first place, we have Viking Lander aliens. A woman who claims to be a former NASA employee claims to have seen evidence of the most monumental cover-up in space history back in 1979, when she saw two human figures in spacesuits walk calmly towards towards the Viking lander across the Martian surface. Going by Jackie, she claimed to have been working for NASA, handling downlink telemetry from the lander, which was the first vehicle to send back images of Mars' surface when she saw 2 people walking on the surface. She and 6 colleagues were watching the Viking rover, bustling about all over various screens when she spotted 2 men in spacesuits, which were not the bulky suits that they normally used at the time, but looked safe. They came over the horizon, walking, right to the Viking Explorer. Naturally, some folks have claimed that the humans may have just been there to polish the lander's solar panels, but that seems a little odd, considering if there were, just humans there, they could have just filled the lander with petrol instead, or take the photographs themselves. Jackie claims that while the folks were maintaining the equipment, their video feed was suddenly cut off without explanation, and when they rushed upstairs for answers, the door leading to the room controlling the equipment was locked, with paper taped over every crevice to avoid anything being seen. Hello? Suspicious red flag alert. If you don't understand how scary cover-ups are and why this is ranked so highly, then I worry about how blasé you are. Other theorists claim there were secret landings on Mars in the 60s, and the Apollo landings were actually a cover-up for wider exploration of the solar system. Former CIA pilot John Lear claims that NASA landed on Mars in 1966, and that humans adapted to breathe the thin Martian atmosphere. Nigel Watson, author of the Haynes UFO Investigations Manual, said that these accounts of secret space missions seem to be growing in number, and remind him of the infamous Project Serpo. Yep, I'll sidetrack. In November 2005, a contact called Anonymous, who said they worked for the US Defense Intelligence Agency, started sending information about an extraordinary alien exchange program called Project Serpo. Basing his claims on a 3,000-page document written in the late 1970s, he boldly claimed that 6 aliens were recovered from the Roswell crash. Claims that aliens living and/or dead were recovered from the Roswell crash are nothing new, but in this case it was stated that an alien survivor from the crash, called EBE-1, helped to organize 12 specially trained people to visit his home planet, Serpo, in the Zeta Reticuli solar system. This mission occurred in 1965 and they remained there until 1978. During their stay, 2 of them died, 2 remained on the planet, and the rest, after returning to Earth, have died because of the high levels of radiation they were exposed to. I'm just saying, NASA has admitted that there are many things out there that we do not know about, and that UFOs are indeed real. So what other secrets are they hiding? I swear between them and the US government, I wish I could file a million Freedom of Information pieces.
Starting at number 5, we have Martians. I know, mentioning Martians sounds crazy, but hear me out. Over the many years of Mars rovers exploring the red planet, NASA has gathered a plethora of information and footage, and within that footage, could be proof of alien life. If you look closely in some photos taken by NASA's many rovers, you can actually see some dark streaks, which may at first look like a shadow, but are in fact flowing water. And this isn't just some screwball theory. NASA themselves has confirmed the existence of water on Mars. Scientists say that the main reason life could be sustained on Earth in the first place was the presence of water. So the chances of there being life on Mars is actually quite high. On top of this, there have been findings of strange rock formations and human-like figures found on Mars, perhaps pointing to proof of advanced life forms. The implications of there being life on Mars is grave. If humans were to go to Mars and meet these aliens, we could be putting ourselves or them in danger. There's a very real chance that any potential Martians are hostile towards humans and could harm them. Another issue could be disease. If a human were to contract an alien disease, our immune systems would not be prepared to deal with it, and it could lead to death. The same problem exists for Martians, who we don't want to endanger. Aliens are way too cool to die. But that's not the worst of it. Next up at number 4 is Mars's intense radiation. One big problem with Mars is that it doesn't have what is called a magnetosphere, which is pretty much the parts in and around a planet that contain its magnetic field. What this field does is protect us from the sun's radiation. Earth has one, and that's why we only have to wear sunscreen when the sun is out. Mars doesn't. And if that isn't enough, Mars is regularly exposed to cosmic rays and solar flares and winds, causing the planet to be even more irradiated. A study by the European Space Agency finds that someone on a mission to Mars would receive a radiation dosage 700 times stronger than what you would on Earth. Long time or extreme exposure to radiation can cause all sorts of effects, like the loss of hair, acute illness, seizures, terrifying mutations, death, and in Spider-Man's case, the ability to climb on walls. Of course, you wouldn't really get superpowers if you were irradiated, unless you call heart failure a superpower. Physicists actually say that one day in space is equivalent to the radiation received on Earth for a whole year. Apart from astronauts on the International Space Station, humans are very rarely exposed to such high levels of radiation, so the long-term effects of space radiation are still somewhat of a mystery. With this much danger and uncertainty surrounding radiation, it's not worth the risk of sending humans to the red planet. So unless you've got some SPF 1 million, I wouldn't recommend tanning on Mars anytime soon, and NASA wouldn't either. And to make things even worse, constant solar winds over time have made Mars's atmosphere incredibly thin, which exposes humans to, you guessed it, even more radiation. Speaking of, Mars's atmosphere is going to be coming in at number 3. Much like our own planet, Mars has an atmosphere, weather, and some beautiful views. However, none of what Mars has is at all like what we have here on Earth. First of all, its atmosphere is composed of different elements than ours. Earth's atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, oxygen, and it's got a little bit of argon, a little bit of water vapor, touch of carbon dioxide. Mars's atmosphere, on the other hand, is 95% carbon dioxide and has trace amounts of nitrogen, oxygen, methane, and other gases. The most glaring difference in the two atmospheres is the amount of carbon dioxide there is compared to oxygen and nitrogen. The difference is a major reason for why us Earthlings wouldn't last a second on Mars without a spacesuit. As humans, we need oxygen to breathe. When we inhale, we take oxygen from the air and use it to fuel our bodies. When we exhale, all the other gases come out, as our body has no use for it. Most of what we exhale is carbon dioxide. So when put on a planet which has an atmosphere that's almost entirely composed of the gas that our body gets rid of, and has barely any of the one we need to function, things go bad quickly. Even if you were able to breathe carbon dioxide, Mars is thin. The standard air pressure on Earth is 1,013 millibars. On Mars, the surface pressure averages to 7. That's less than 1% of the air pressure on Earth. When under such low pressures, and bruising. But worst of all, Mars's low pressure will cause a fatal condition called regardless of temperature, which, yeah, is a pretty good reason to stay on Earth. What many fail to recognize is the danger of number 2, Mars's brutal temperatures. If you've ever seen a photo of Mars, you would know the planet is pretty much just one big desert. And call me crazy, but that screams that this planet is super hot to me. But in fact, the opposite is true. Yes, that's right. Mars is actually an incredibly cold planet. In fact, its temperatures get so low, they can prove fatal. Now, in all fairness, this isn't all the time. Mars can reach temperatures as high as 20 degrees Celsius, which is 70 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a pleasant temperature, caused mostly by the heat of the sun. But when the sun goes down, you're gonna regret not packing a thicker coat, as the desert planet's temperatures can get as low as minus 153 degrees Celsius, which is minus 225 degrees Fahrenheit. The lowest recorded temperature on Earth was minus 89 degrees Celsius, which is minus 129 degrees Fahrenheit, and that was in Antarctica. The temperature known as absolute zero, which is a temperature that is so cold that it is physically impossible to reach it by natural means, is only about minus 273 degrees Celsius, which is minus 460 Fahrenheit. That means that Mars's coldest temperatures are actually closer to absolute zero than they are to its warmest temperatures. And that's just nighttime. Mars, like Earth, has seasons, and when Mars reaches winter, it gets bone chilling. Snow, ice, frost, you name it. It covers the planet during Martian winters, getting several feet of snow. And because of its thin, carbon dioxide rich atmosphere, it actually snows dry ice. Because dry ice is made up of carbon dioxide, as it lands and turns back into a gas through sublimation, it fills the air with even more carbon dioxide, creating a cold breathing hazard for humans. On top of all this, during the winter, air pressure drops greatly, proving Mars to be a near impossible planet to visit as a human. The cold, barren wasteland that is Mars is certainly a mighty place to fear. But the scariest reason NASA won't send people to Mars is number 1 on this list. It's its toxic dust storms. If you were wondering what makes the red planet so red, the answer is Mars's surplus of dust. There's actually so much dust on Mars that it gets kicked up into the atmosphere, making it appear red. On Earth, we have hurricanes, but on Mars they have dust storms. If you've seen The Martian, then you would know that these dust storms can reach hundreds of feet in height and will lay waste to anything in its path. In the movie, the storm is seen ripping apart an antenna, some equipment, and the astronauts' camp. How it looks in the movie isn't that far off from reality, and that one was one of the lighter dust storms. About annually, Mars will face dust storms that reach the size the equivalent to entire continents on Earth. These storms are not only much bigger than the usual ones, but are also far more intense. And very rarely, a bunch of normal storms will come together and grow into a planet-encircling dust storm, or as NASA calls them, global dust storms. These global dust storms are as unpredictable as they are dangerous. The damage these storms would do to a human or human colony is immeasurable. Not only that, but they would make the simple act of going to Mars difficult, as the large masses of dust swirling around could reduce visibility and disrupt flight paths. With how common these storms are, they also have a great potential to disconnect communication between Earth and Mars, jeopardizing any astronaut trying to traverse the solar system's dustiest planet. Which is why Mars is so scary, because it doesn't even take that much to put you in danger, as Mars also has small invisible dust storms called dust devils. While they have no correlation to the actual devil, thank God, they still prove to be a formidable threat. Their erratic nature and unpredictable paths can disrupt all sorts of equipment, rovers, and people alike. From the sounds of it, Earth's mission to Mars won't be happening anytime soon. We can only hope that conditions improve on the red planet. But considering it's been this way for millions of years, I have high doubts. At number 5 is advanced alien technology. Before you guys come at me and call me some sci-fi nut, hear me out. For aliens to get to Earth, they would need highly complex and state-of-the-art technology to create spacecrafts that safely take them from galaxy to galaxy. While this is something most people are aware of, the true nature of alien technology still remains a secret. In the momentous Grush hearing, he goes on to explain that the United States government is currently harboring and hiding alien technology and life. He claimed that the US has retrieved multiple crashed UFOs, some with aliens still inside, and upon retrieval, they picked them apart in order to research their technologies. However, we still have zero information on what exactly they've found and what futuristic technical knowledge they have attained. We have a general idea of the great danger that we may be in when in contact with an alien threat, but the full extent of that danger remains hidden. We can only assume that the US is in the process of deciphering the secrets to making our own UFOs, which we could use to explore other planets within and outside our solar system, and perhaps even colonize them. But we might not have to wait for very long before we discover what it is we know and what it is we don't know. Harvard professor Avi Loeb has been in Papua New Guinea investigating a meteor that crashed in the neighboring ocean in 2014. This specific meteor was of great interest, as when it crashed, it moved at speeds that are too fast for it to be gravitationally bound to the sun, and that the material it's made of was significantly tougher than that of other meteors. These traits indicate that the meteor could in fact be some sort of spacecraft or piece of alien technology. Upon finally finding the interstellar rock, Loeb and crew found microscopic, marble-like objects made of an alloy never before seen in our solar system. If these small marbles are confirmed to be artificial, then we could be stumbling upon the first confirmed pieces of genuine extraterrestrial technology. My theory? These are alien microplastics, or at least some sort of equivalent. The microscopic size of these marbles can indicate that these are only smaller, broken down versions of pre-existing technology or items that aliens might use. If this is the case, then hopefully scientists will find a way to reverse engineer these small alien spheres and discover their true origins. Coming up next, at number 4, is panspermia. Deriving from the ancient Greek words pan, meaning all, and sperma, meaning seed, panspermia is a hypothesis created by the Greek philosopher Anaxagoras in the 5th century BC. It states that life exists all across the universe, as it has been distributed by space dust, meteoroids, asteroids, and of course different spacecrafts carrying bacteria and other microorganisms. Hence the name panspermia. It means that the seeds of life are spread all across the universe. All, pan, seed, spermia, yeah, you get it. While the concept of panspermia emerged thousands of years ago, its relevance to our understanding of extraterrestrial life is as vibrant as ever. In recent space exploration missions, the European Space Agency's ExoMars rover and NASA's Perseverance rover have been equipped with instruments built specifically to analyze the surface of Mars for signs of life that has found itself on the planet through space dust, comets, and all those other fun space things. Furthermore, advancements in space exploration have led to discovery of something called extremophiles, resilient microorganisms that thrive in the extreme environments on Earth and other places in space. Their existence on Earth indicates that life can also thrive on the harsh environments of other planets. The most well-known example of an extremophile, you might have heard of them, is the tardigrade, better known as a water bear. These 8-legged microanimals are thought to be one of the most resilient life forms known. They are capable of surviving extreme temperatures, pressures, air deprivation, high amounts of radiation, dehydration, and starvation. In fact, tardigrades are so resilient that they're capable of surviving the cold, dark vacuum of space. If animals that can survive in space already exist on Earth, imagine how many other tardigrade-like species exist on other planets, opening the door for panspermia across the universe. Who knows, maybe there are plenty of extremophilic aliens on Earth already. We've just been looking in the wrong places. And at number 3 is going to be life on Mars. The existence of life on Mars is certainly not a new concept to anyone, especially with the discovery of water on the red planet, which is widely considered in the scientific community to be a necessary foundation for the development of life. However, even with all these findings, NASA claims to be incapable of finding actual life on Mars. But that might be because it's already found its way to Earth 13,000 years ago. Allen Hills 84001, or just ALH 84001 for short, is an ancient meteorite discovered in Antarctica in 1984. The remarkable rock, ejected from the Martian surface 4.1 billion years ago, has offered many clues towards the existence of life hidden beneath our solar neighbor's surface. In 1996, a team of scientists led by David McKay of NASA's Johnson Space Center announced their discovery of intriguing fossil-like microstructures and features within the meteorite. These fossils imply that life on Mars did in fact exist, just long before humanity. And this isn't the only proof. In 1976, the United States landed 2 of their own Viking landers, making them the first US spacecrafts to land on the red planet. The crafts would be the first to take high-resolution images of the planet and analyze a variety of the planet's features. But most importantly, an examination of the Martian soil tested positive for metabolism, which heavily suggests the presence of life. Theories of them hiding the alien race to Martians having been long extinct, and that the red planet's desolate nature is caused by it being the ruins of a once vivacious planet. But what do you guys think? Is life currently on Mars? Has it already gone extinct? Or maybe there are already Martians hidden among us right now? Tell me in the comments. At number 2 is life across the solar system. Immanuel Kant, the renowned 18th century philosopher, posited a compelling argument regarding the potential existence of alien intelligence in his work titled Universal Natural History and Theory of the Heavens, which is probably the coolest book name ever, but I digress. Kant states that the universe is so vast that the existence of aliens is certain. I mean, there are just so many stars and planets that at least one of them has to sustain life, right? It was his ideas that laid the groundwork for modern discussions on the existence of extraterrestrial life. The Drake equation, formulated by astrophysicist Frank Drake in 1961, complements Kant's theories by providing a more mathematical approach to estimate the number of alien civilizations in our galaxy that might be capable of communication. The equation factors in various variables, such as the rate of star formation, the fraction of stars with planets, the number of habitable planets per star, the fraction of planets where life emerges, and the longevity of technologically advanced civilizations. With the hundreds of billions of stars within our galaxy, along with the recent discoveries of exoplanets around those stars, there are certainly countless habitable worlds scattered throughout the Milky Way. In fact, life could exist within our very solar system. Beyond just Mars and its many riverbeds and subsurface water ice, there's Enceladus and Titan, moons of Saturn. These moons both have subsurface oceans, lakes, rivers, and seas beneath their icy crusts, making them potential hotbeds for life. Some scientists have even observed on Titan that there may be living cells deep within its seas, making it home to several microbial Saturnian species. It's kind of a mouthful. Another theory of Kant's was that aliens' intelligence becomes more intelligent the further we are from the star that we orbit, meaning that planets like Mercury and Venus would not be likely to hold intelligent life, but planets like Saturn and Neptune hold highly intelligent life. Now, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but humans are already a very smart species. But if Kant's theory is correct, then that would make us the dumb ones in the solar system. Us, the dumb ones. What the hell? Anyway, at number 1 is the wow signal. With the confirmation of alien life on Earth and its existence on other planets within our solar system, there is not a single doubt in my mind that aliens populate not only our galaxy, but the entire depths of space. However, what NASA doesn't want you to know is that we've actually been directly contacted by aliens nearly half a century ago. On August 15th, 1977, astronomer Jerry R. Ayman, I probably pronounced that wrong, would find something incredible while working on the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI for short, project at Ohio State University. Using the university's Big Ear radio telescope, he was able to intercept a mysterious and strong radio signal coming from the Sagittarius constellation, which lasted for 72 seconds and displayed displayed characteristics suggesting an artificial source. Any Sag fans watching right now? The signal got its name because after Eamon discovered it, he would circle it and write "wow" in big letters next to it. What makes it so fascinating are its unique characteristics. It was a narrow-band radio signal, meaning it was confined to a very specific range of radio frequencies. Natural cosmic sources do not emit signals in such a narrow range, making the signal's origin almost certainly alien. Moreover, the signal's intensity varied significantly during its brief appearance, suggesting a point source moving relative to the telescope. The immediate assumption at the time was that this signal was caused by a passing satellite, but extensive research and attempts to recreate the signal has shown that it is impossible to recreate by human means. Unfortunately, the signal was so seemingly random that it is undecipherable, and humanity has yet to receive such a signal since. But with all these aliens close to us already, I have no doubt the ones way far out will contact us again soon. Let's just cross our fingers and hope they're friendly. If one thing is certain, it's that we're going to be interacting with alien life a whole lot more in the near future, and I'm all here for it. But what about you guys? Does the very idea of talking to an alien make you froth at the mouth? Or are you more in the camp of not caring about aliens because life is already too busy to be worrying about these kinds of things? Either way, this seems to be an issue that will only get more and more prevalent as time passes.
Number 5, is there life beyond Earth? Now, while today we're exclusively talking about NASA's perspective on things, I'm a firm believer that aliens are out there somewhere, possibly poking their head near Earth from, time to time, watching us be, well, idiots. Every week it's getting a lot easier to believe in aliens. If you haven't been keeping up with all the government whistleblower stuff, I'd recommend looking into it like ASAP. Especially the David Grush whistleblower reports. Easily some of the most credible reporting that's ever happened when it comes to this out of the world stuff. No matter how improbable the origin of life on Earth may have been, and I promise I will get to that, there should, in theory, be many other living planets in the universe. Look, there are about 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe, each containing tens of billions of stars. Many of these stars have planets, so even if life only forms on one planet out of every trillion, the number of life-bearing planets in the universe should be, according to my calculations, a lot. I wasn't good at math in high school, and I'm still not good at it now, but trust me, the science says there should be quite a few. Feel free to do the math for yourself. In our own solar system, a few locations appear to be hospitable to microbial life. The planet Mars, the subsurface ocean of Europa, which is one of Jupiter's Galilean moons, and maybe the warm interior of Saturn's satellite Enceladus. I swear I looked up how to pronounce that one, but if I butchered it, I blame the headache I've had all day. Mars is pretty popular for theories of Martians, be it previous beings who lived there or current elusive populations. The discovery of Martian bacteria, either extant or extinct, would immediately tell astrobiologists that life is extremely common in the universe. So far, however, nothing has been found, although there's plenty of evidence that Mars was warmer and wetter in its distant past. Casting their wets a little bit wider, astronomers are just starting to sniff out the atmosphere of exoplanets, which is a whole other can of worms. I only just learned about them this year, and that's a whole other video. But an exoplanet or extrasolar planet is a planet outside of the solar system. The first possible evidence of an exoplanet was noted in 1917, but was not recognized as such, making the first confirmation of detection happening officially in 1992. A different planet, initially detected in 1988, was confirmed in 2003. As you know, of the time of my chattering today, there are 5,484 confirmed exoplanets in 4,047 planetary systems, with 875 systems having more than one planet. Not to overstate the obvious, but that's a lot. And I'm pretty sure that's without counting the planets that have been swallowed by black holes. If a planet's atmosphere turns out to contain substantial quantities of oxygen and methane, it's almost certain it must have living organisms on its surface. On Earth, it took billions of years for life to evolve from single cellular organisms to anything bigger than the itty-bitty Annabelle doll that lives on my desk. Looking for microbial life may therefore give us the best chance of success. On the other hand, that restricts the search to planetary systems in our immediate neighborhood. That's why some researchers are trying to eavesdrop on the radio communications of alien civilizations. If they exist, they could be picked up from the other side of the Milky Way, but that assumes that the biological evolution of life necessarily leads to intelligence and technology. For now, no matter how likely the existence of extraterrestrial life seems, it is still technically an unproven hypothesis. I doubt how much longer though, with how many whistleblowers and informants coming forward. Number 4, the Big Bang Theory. Alrighty, I'll allow a single moment for everyone to mentally let the Bare Naked Ladies theme song from the popular sitcom run through their head. And moment over. The theory is the leading explanation for how the universe began. I think the easiest way to explain it is that it says the universe as we know it started with an infinitely hot and dense single point that inflated and stretched, first at unimaginable speeds and then at a more measurable rate over the next 13.7 billion years to the still expanding cosmos that we know today. Existing technology doesn't yet allow astronomers to literally peer back at the universe's birth, meaning much of what we understand about the Big Bang comes from mathematical formulas and models. If you want to look up the formulas, that's entirely up to you. I'm not even going to try to break those down, because knowing me, I'd get lost partway through and I'd be finding my way back for the rest of today's video. But after all that, it's still only a theory. To find out the cause of the Big Bang, you assume a prior event that apparently had a universe-spawning effect. Perhaps the Big Bang not only amounted to the creation of matter and energy, but also the origin of space and time itself. In that case, it's difficult to talk about a logical cause. This is heavy philosophical stuff, so it's hardly surprising that cosmologists have tried to circumvent the spontaneous creation of a universe out of nothing. Until recently, some scientists held the view that the universe would someday recollapse, eventually leading to another bang. But we've since learned that the current expansion of the universe will probably never stop, so that idea went away. Instead, some physicists suggest that the Big Bang was caused by our empty four-dimensional space-time colliding with another universe that floats next to ours in a higher dimensional bulk space. Experts still don't have a singular reason as to what caused the bang, if it's even true, so feel free to debate your take on the theory and what you believe in the comments. Number 3, did inflation happen? Obviously, I'm not talking about financials. The housing market and grocery chains have very much inflated over the last couple of years, and my goal of possibly owning a 2-bedroom condo in my city keeps slipping farther away, even with work in 6 to 7 days every week. The theory says that inflation was an extremely brief burst of exponential growth at the start of the universe. Within a tiny fraction of a second, the universe doubled its size 100 times in succession before settling down in the much more sedate expansion it has experienced ever since. This rapid inflation, fueled by a mysterious form of energy that permeated empty space itself, left the universe pretty desolate and chilly. Only after that did the hot, dense conditions of the Big Bang emerge. As the doubling of the universe ceased, the energy of the vacuum underwent a metamorphosis, transforming into particles of matter and radiation. That metamorphosis flooded space with the superhot plasma of the Big Bang, which forged the primordial elements that went on to make the stars and galaxies we see today. I can hear y'all now, but Alexa, did it actually happen? Maybe. Inflation was greeted by cosmologists as a solution to the annoying problem that asked how could the universe be so homogeneous if remote parts were never in touch with each other? The possible answer is that it blew up from the size of a subatomic particle to the size of a grapefruit, so our observable universe, now some 27 billion light years across, was small enough for any inhomogeneities to be ironed out. Moreover, inflation explains why the large-scale curvature of our universe appears to be 0. Despite this theory, there's very little direct evidence for inflation. Space inflation, that is. Number 2. What ingredients make up our universe? The short answer is super easy. No bleeping idea. The familiar matter that we do know about, atoms and molecules, is just the tip of this crazy iceberg. By far the largest amount of matter is dark and consists of unknown particles. If that wasn't mysterious enough, the vacuum of empty space is filled with a mysterious dark energy that accelerates the expansion of the universe. We're not only missing the bulk of the iceberg, we also know zilch about the dark ocean in which it floats. Dark matter reveals its presence by its gravitational influence. This can be seen in observations of the rotational velocities of galaxies, the motions of those galaxies in giant clusters, and the way the gravity of the clusters bends the light from the background objects, which is observed during gravitational lensing. All suggest that the total amount of matter in the universe is about 30 times more than what can be seen with telescopes. So, maybe could dark matter be accounted for by dim stars, cold gas clouds, and black holes? Nah, not even close to that easy. If all the dark matter were composed of baryons, which are the protons and neutrons that make up atomic nuclei, the universe would look kinda different. With so many baryons around, the nuclear fusion reactions that occurred during the Big Bang would have produced a different mix of elements. So if you accept the Big Bang theory, there's no way out. The vast majority of the material content of the universe really is composed of mysterious non-baryonic particles, and then you add dark energy into the mix. A catchy name, but no one knows what it is. In 1998, astronomers discovered that the current expansion rate of the universe is larger than it was a few billion years ago. Apparently, the expansion of the universe is speeding up, despite the mutual gravitational attraction of galaxies that is expected to slow it down. Dark energy, which can be thought of as being like the repulsive force of empty space, is held responsible for this acceleration. Some 70% of the full content of the universe consists of dark energy. The remaining 30% is matter, but only a small part of this matter, roughly 4% of the total content of the universe, is composed of ordinary particles, and at most almost 1/4 of this baryonic matter is visible to us as stars and gas clouds. Most cosmologists are happy with the concordance model. All of the jigsaw pieces appear to fit nicely. But the only teensy-weensy problem is that nobody knows what the puzzle represents. Number 1. How fragile was the creation of Earth? Imagine a world without gravity, skyscrapers, or even animals. According to some very popular theories, if one little thing had been different during the creation of the world, the life we know could have been drastically different. Our material universe consists of elementary particles, governed by the 4 forces of nature. Physicists can measure particle properties like the mass ratio between protons and electrons. They can study the strength and behavior of gravity, electromagnetism, and the 2 nuclear forces. And they can determine a host of physical constants, like the speed of light. But no one knows why all those values are what they are. So now I feel a lot better, knowing I dropped science when I did in high school. But the very, very popular question is, why is the universe the way it is, and could it have been different? One thing is crystal clear: don't mess with the cosmos. Which honestly lends a lot to time travel theories, how going back in time and messing with so much as adding a body is able to drastically alter the fabric of the world as we know it. Just a slight change in the mass or charge of a particular type of particle, or a tiny increase in the strength of one's, nature forces, would render the universe devoid of stars, planets, and life. It looks as if nature has been tweaked to produce complexity, or fine-tuned for the emergence of life. So if the fundamental properties of the universe are the lucky outcome of a random process, it seems like a heck of a coincidence that the result would be so perfectly tailored. If I'm talking betting man odds, if you only buy one lottery ticket, it's highly unlikely to be the winning one. On the other hand, if some yet to be discovered theory of everything allows only one possible universe, it's unclear why that unique solution would have to be a life-spawning one. The multiverse would be a possible solution to this mystery, where our universe is just one of a huge ensemble of many possible universes. If there are zillions of universes, all possible combinations of natural constants, particle properties, and strengths of forces could occur somewhere. Of course, we necessarily find ourselves in a universe that allows for the origin of life. Hey, I'm all for a multiverse theory. Number 5, an alien body. Yep, kicking today off with a corpse. Go figure. Do you expect anything less? This tale takes place in Russia, and while I don't exactly recommend physically trying to travel there right now for, reasons, we shall take this trip virtually. Eugenia Popova of Petrovadovsk City first reported in 2011 that she had been keeping a frozen alien body in a refrigerator for a couple of years, just casually. I do have a couple of questions. Did she keep it next to her food? Was it a spare fridge? Did it smell? Allegedly, she found it next to her summer house, so I suppose we can assume it was a fridge that wasn't used as much? On the original day that she discovered the body, Eugenia claimed that she was disturbed by a terrible noise that shook her from her sleep, describing it as deafening, screeching, and overpowering. She rushed outdoors and came across the boiling hot alien remains lying next to metal fragments. The creature was between 40 to 50 centimeters long, had a big head, mouth, and orbits, and was wearing a one-piece garment of some sort. 2 days after going public with her story, Eugenia was visited by some people who confiscated the body for the purpose of investigation, and according to their words, took it to the Karelian Research Center of the Russian Academy of Sciences. However, employees of the research center who were interviewed later said that they had never heard of the discovery. I'm sensing an all too familiar government cover-up here. How about you folks at home? Honestly, if the photos weren't as convincing as they are, I probably wouldn't have included it in today's list, but I just couldn't tear my eyes away from how strange it looks. Number 4, Skinny Bob. Yes, I'm aware this is a controversial series of videos, but I truly believe that there's enough to believe, to prove the validity of the clips. A very curious video showed up on YouTube in 2011, showing a collection of leaked videos that allegedly shows an alien being interrogated by some government agency, possibly the KGB. So if I go missing tomorrow, y'all know why now. An alien that looks like a typical gray type entity is shown being interviewed and examined, supposedly as part of some sort of diplomatic exchange. The creature is described as being from the Zeta Reticuli star system, sent as part of an envoy to discuss matters of mutual concern. According to the videos, the aliens would be escorted by special officers and only meet with high-ranking officials. Although several aliens are claimed to have been present, the one most prominently featured has been given the nickname Skinny Bob. The alien appears as a very thin, slouched over figure with an oversized bald head, slit-like mouth, large eyes that seem expressive and blink, and claw-like hands. There was apparently a whole series of interviews conducted with the creature between 1942 and 1969, although only a few clips have managed to get leaked out. The most well-known clip simply shows Skinny Bob sitting at a table, apparently in a telepathic interview, after which we see footage of the alien from head to toe, showing its disproportionately long arms and overall build. After that, there was a shot of it within a pool of some sort of liquid where it supposedly slept. According to the videos, the aliens were often filmed without their knowledge or agreement, with document 072/E supposedly describing an incident in 1961 where 3 of the beings realized that they were being secretly filmed by a hidden device, which was considered a violation of their agreement. There was a treaty that stipulated that photographs and filming of the entities would not be allowed unless specific permission was given. While these 2 clips are the most well-known and widely available, there were allegedly other clips that have since been taken down, such as that of the alien spacecraft and another of an autopsy being performed on a dead specimen at the base. I will admit there have been many assumptions that this footage was faked, but let's review the evidence here. The budget to pull off this sort of high-quality costuming and filming would have been over $250,000 alone, and no one has claimed responsibility or tried to monetize the footage in any way. Many CGI experts and those in movie industry, have studied the footage, and most agree that if fake, it's the work of a studio with a big budget. Number 3, the tales of Edgar Mitchell. Edgar was an Apollo astronaut who passed away in 2018 at the age of 85 and had many theories about aliens that he often shared with the public. He believed aliens are real and UFOs from extraterrestrials have visited us before, publicly stating that he thought there was a cover-up involving aliens and their visits to Earth. As the 6th man to walk the moon and a NASA astronaut, his theories and beliefs were among the most credible of UFO believers. Not only was Edgar an astronaut, but he was also a test pilot for the Navy, had an MS in aeronautical engineering, and was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1970. Part of his belief in alien life stemmed from experiences he had returning to Earth from the moon, where he felt more connected with the universe than he ever had before. Edgar has said publicly that he's 90% sure that many of the unidentified flying objects recorded since the 1940s belong to aliens from other planets. When he started speaking out in around the 1990s, he said he was only then coming out with his knowledge because he didn't want to be labeled a UFO crank, and stood by his beliefs no matter how much he was criticized. Which, I get it. In an interview in 1996, Edgar said that there were alien bodies at Roswell, but the government covered it up. In 1998, he called on Washington, D.C. to acknowledge publicly what it knew about alien life. He said he had witnesses he knew personally from intelligence agencies and the military who convinced him the U.S. government had been covering up UFOs for 50 years, including evidence from Roswell. In 2008, he was interviewed and spoke about how the Roswell crash was real and aliens had contacted humans multiple times. Interestingly, Edgar's beliefs were in line with those of Philip James Corso, who was chief of U.S. Counterintelligence Corp in Rome in the 1940s and chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk in the 1960s. He even wrote a book, The Day After Roswell, where he said that he moved alien artifacts from the Roswell crash, which were later reverse engineered to develop some of our more advanced technology. In an interview in 1996, Edgar said he had met with officials from 3 other countries who had personal encounters with aliens from other planets, not just secondhand information. The evidence of alien contact was strong and classified, including that extraterrestrials were giving technology to the US government. In 2004, Edgar said that the government was studying alien bodies, but stopped sharing that information with presidents after John F. Kennedy. During a radio interview, he said that aliens were far more advanced than us, and we would have been gone a long time ago if they were hostile. Well, a witness doesn't really get more credible than that. Number 2, Roswell. Look, whether you like it or not, Roswell is easily the most popular and controversial alien and UFO spotting to this day, and there is so much lore around it to not mention it consistently. Former CIA agent Oscar Wayne Wolf claims he saw both living aliens, retrieved parts, and remains of alien ships throughout his career. Where have I said this before? The agent made these shocking claims about the infamous Area 51, claiming he caught a glimpse of an extraterrestrial spacecraft and a living alien. The 77-year-old man was speaking to UFO researcher Richard Dolan, but concerned about giving up his true identity at the time, went by the anonymous, which I get. After the agent made his claims, it was then shared at the Citizens Hearing on Disclosure held at the National Press Club in Washington in 2013. The agent is understood to have used a fake name throughout his career in the CIA, so the chances of his real name having been used in the account were never super high. He worked for the CIA between 1957 and 1960, where he spent time in a military base in the southeast US where they analyzed physical evidence. In 2013, fearing he might soon pass away, the anonymous came forward for one more conversation, this time with Richard Dolan. He claimed that he was taken into Area 51 to look at items allegedly found and retrieved by the US government. He also claimed among them was a flying saucer that crashed and landed in July of 1947 in, you guessed it, Roswell, New Mexico. He stated there were live aliens there and that he was taken to the S4 facility in Area 51. In his statement, he described seeing different saucer crafts in the facility, with the first place he visited holding the Roswell craft, and it was kind of crashed up, but apparently every alien that was in it died except for a few. The Roswell craft was really strange because it looked like really heavy aluminum foil. At S4, he viewed the autopsy film, where the colonel on screen said, "What we've got here is we're interviewing a gray alien." Now, the anonymous had no idea he was going to see the film, saying the alien didn't look human as far as the skin tone and basically the shape of it and the size of its head compared with a normal human. Following the interview, he was warned by the CIA not to conduct any further interviews or disclosures. Well, once again, if you never see me again, you know why. Number 1, Russian soccer players. Another Russian spotting. Interesting. On September 27th of 1989 in Voronezh, Russia, several young folks claimed to have seen a 9-foot-tall, 3-eyed alien with a robot escort. This case was reported in the United States by the St. Louis Dispatch, and it was originally published on October 11th in the US, but its origin was the Russian newspaper TASS. The original details of the case were brought forward by Zhenrik Silanov, head of the Voronezh Geophysical Laboratory, who gave the details to the TASS agency. Silanov stated that the media took an enormous amount of creative freedom with his report. The agency had informed the entire world that Russian scientists had confirmed that an alien spaceship carrying giants with tiny heads had landed in Voronezh, a city of over 800,000 people located around 300 miles southeast of Moscow. They stated that as many as 3 of these giant creatures had emerged from the alien ship, and the ship was described as a large shining ball. These creatures were said to have walked in a nearby park accompanied by a menacing robot. The TASS account stated that the UFO landed in Voronezh on September 27, 1989 at 6:30 p.m. Young boys playing soccer witnessed the event, stating that a pinkish glow preceded the descent of the unusual flying craft, becoming a deep red as it touched down, and most witnesses described the object as a flattened sort of disc shape. A crowd quickly gathered, no kidding, and peered through a hatch that opened, which is when they saw a 3-eyed alien about 10 feet tall, clad in silvery overalls and bronze-colored boots and wearing a disc on his chest. Now, the account also stated that a boy screamed with fear, but when the alien gazed at him, with eyes shining, he fell silent and unable to move. Onlookers screamed, and the UFO and the creatures disappeared. And according to the report, about 5 minutes later, they came back. The alien held a tube about 20 inches long, which it pointed at an unidentified 16-year-old boy, making him disappear. The alien went inside the sphere, which then took off, and at the same time the boy reappeared. Eyewitnesses had been questioned by police workers and journalists, and there were no discrepancies in the description of the sphere itself or the actions of the aliens. Now, TASS listed the 3 witnesses' names, all of them were youngsters, and stated that a group of international researchers would be investigating the claims of the witnesses. Residents interviewed later claimed they'd observed this UFO not just during the above incident, but also many times on September 21st, 23rd, 29th, and October 2nd, all between 6 to 9 p.m. And this all remains an unsolved mystery.
Number 5. Untethered astronaut. On August 22nd, 2022, NASA unleashed a chilling photograph into the vast abyss of doom that is Twitter, a snapshot that left the world collectively gasping for breath. The haunting image featured an untethered astronaut suspended in the inky blackness of space, seemingly mere inches above Earth's fragile horizon. It was a bone-chilling glimpse into the unforgiving void that lies beyond our protective planet. The first thing that strikes you is the astronaut's stark isolation. Against the backdrop of space and our familiar blue and white world, they appear as a minuscule, fragile figure. No lifeline, no tether connecting them to the safety of the International Space Station, just a solitary figure against the cosmic abyss. This photograph instantly transported viewers to the unsettling reality of the astronaut's existence, a realm where the nearest human is not just out of reach, but out of sight. The astronaut's visor was a window into their terrifying predicament. It reflected the expanse of space, capturing the stars that stretched endlessly into the distance. The visor encapsulated the astronaut's vulnerability, a thin layer of protection against the merciless vacuum beyond. It was a cruel juxtaposition, the vast, boundless cosmos mirrored in the helmet of a lone human. The background was a canvas of darkness, punctuated only by the distant stars. Space in this photograph was not the romanticized exist, where the cold seeped through every inch of the astronaut's suit, and where the laws of nature showed no mercy. This overwhelming sensation was one of isolation. The image forced viewers' terrifying photograph served as a stark testament to the courage and determination of those who venture beyond the bounds of Earth. It encapsulated the stark, unyielding nature of space, where the line between survival and oblivion was razor thin. It was a haunting glimpse into the cold expanse of the cosmos, where humans are but fleeting visitors. Face on Mars. The enigmatic face on Mars is an iconic image that has captivated imaginations, fueled conspiracy theories, and sparked debates about extraterrestrial life for decades. This unsettling photograph was captured by NASA's Viking. There, on the barren Martian landscape, lies what appears to be a colossal visage gazing into the depths of space. Its symmetrical features, shadowed eyes, and distinct mouth give it an eerie humanoid, a chilling testament to the mysteries that lie beyond our earthly realm. The ambiguity surrounding the origins of this formation adds to its terror, while scientific consensus obscurity. The fear also stems from the implications of such a discovery. If the face on Mars were indeed a deliberate creation, it would raise profound questions about the existence of intelligent life beyond Earth. It would shatter the perception that humanity is alone in the universe, opening a Pandora's box of existential questions and fears about our place in the cosmos. In the end, the face on Mars serves as a haunting reminder of the boundless mysteries that space exploration continues to uncover. Whether it's a mere trick of light in geology or an eye in the Hourglass Nebula. The last thing anyone wants to see when looking into a telescope is space looking back at you. But in 1996, a haunting image was captured. The Hourglass Nebula, a celestial marvel situated some 8,000 light years away from Earth in the constellation Musca, has long been a subject of fascination among astronomers and stargazers alike. It's renowned for its mesmerizing figure-8 shape, but in a haunting image captured by the Hubble Space Telescope, an otherworldly anomaly emerges. Earthly spectacle presents an unsettling paradox. The serenity of the nebula's symmetrical form contrasting with the eerie intensity of the central eye. The hourglass shape itself, formed by the powerful winds of a dying star at its core, stretches outwards in perfect symmetry, an ethereal ballet of interstellar gas dark enigma. A watchful alien presence amidst the celestial choreography. The eyes of the disquieting intrigue. It appears almost sentient, as if the nebula itself were a cosmic and otherworldly ambience. The sense of haunting is amplified by the knowledge that the Hourglass Nebula is a nursery for new stars. While its outer appearance suggests tranquility, this is, in fact, a cosmic cauldron where new celestial bodies are born, and older stars meet their fiery ends. Juxtaposition of creation and annihilation, embodied by the figure-8 shape and the eye at its core, underscores the profound mysteries of the universe. This haunting image evokes contemplation about the cosmic forces. This haunting image, with its central green eye, is a testament to the vast, enigmatic beauty standing of the universe and igniting existential questions about the possibility of extraterrestrial life and its implications. Like structures, is sprawled across the rusty red landscape. The image is a stark reminder of the desolation of Mars. Its barren, windswept terrain is devoid of any signs of life as we know it. Yet, here, unmistakably, are what appear to be skeletal remains. Relics of a life form that once inhabited the red planet. The bones are bleached white, standing in stark contrast to the Martian soil, as if they were placed there deliberately to be discovered. The mere presence of bones on Mars challenges the boundaries of our understanding. How did these remains come to be? Are they the remnants of an ancient Martian species, now long extinct? Or is there a more sinister explanation? The unanswered questions weigh heavily on the mind, casting a pall of dread over the discovery. The image is particularly terrifying because it raises the specter of an unknown cosmic predator. The bones seem to suggest a creature with a skeletal structure, not dissimilar from earthly animals, and the thought of an alien predator lurking on Mars sends a shiver down the spine. What else lies hidden beneath the Martian surface, waiting to be unearthed by intrepid explorers? Furthermore, the discovery of Martian bones ignites fear about contamination. If these bones are indeed remnants of ancient life, what potential threats do they pose to future human exploration on Mars? Could they carry diseases or microorganisms that might jeopardize our efforts to colonize the red planet? Ultimately, the image of bones found on Mars is a chilling reminder of the unknown and the unknowable. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the eerie possibilities that exist beyond our terrestrial realm. It's a haunting glimpse into a cosmic enigma, a puzzle with pieces that are simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. And it leaves us with a sense of awe and cosmic dread as we grapple with the mysteries that Mars continues to unveil. I just wonder what those bones belong to. I hope not a dog. Dogs should never die. And at number 1, Plutonian slugs. Yeah, you heard that right. There might be slugs on the black sheep of the solar system. The discovery of horrifying space slugs on Pluto is a nightmarish revelation that defies all expectations of the icy dwarf planet. In an image captured by a deep space probe sent to explore the outer reaches of our solar system, the cosmic horror unfolds before our eyes. A colony of grotesque, gelatinous creatures resembling monstrous slugs, lurking on the distant world of Pluto. The image is nothing short of terrifying. Against the frigid backdrop of Pluto's desolate landscape, these extraterrestrial slugs writhe and slither. Their amorphous, translucent bodies seem to defy the laws of biology as we understand them. Each slug is riddled with grotesque, undulating appendages that move with a sickening rhythm, giving them an otherworldly, repulsive appearance. The very notion of life on Pluto is a chilling paradox. The planet's extreme cold, lack of atmosphere, and its location on the outer fringes of the solar system make it one of the most inhospitable places in our celestial neighborhood. That these nightmarish creatures not only exist, but thrive in such a hostile environment is the stuff of cosmic horror. The behavior of these space slugs adds to the terror. They seem to feed on some unknown source, perhaps subsisting on elements unique to Pluto's surface. Their movements are slow and deliberate, and their inscrutable motives leave us with an impending sense of dread. Are they the sole inhabitants of this frozen wasteland, or are they part of a larger, more sinister ecosystem that is yet to reveal itself? Furthermore, the presence of these creatures raises troubling questions about the potential consequences of interstellar contamination. Could these space slugs harbor deadly pathogens or alien microorganisms that might pose a threat to future missions to Pluto or other celestial bodies? The fear of unknowingly unleashing a cosmic menace upon our world adds an extra layer of dread to the discovery. I for one think we should never even try going to Pluto, if there really are slugs there. They're gross enough here on Earth, could you imagine how slimy alien ones are? I'll give you a hint. Very slimy. At number 5, Cydonia missions. Mars, our enigmatic red neighbor, has long fascinated scientists and space enthusiasts with its otherworldly mysteries. Among these mysteries, one of the most intriguing is its own version of the Bermuda Triangle, a region of the planet that has baffled scientists and captured the imagination of those who dare to explore its depths. This Martian enigma lies in the vicinity of the infamous Cydonia region and has been the subject of countless speculations and conspiracy theories. The Cydonia region gained notoriety when the Viking 1 orbiter captured a striking image in 1976, what appeared to be a colossal humanoid face staring out from the Martian surface. While later missions and high-resolution photographs revealed it to be a trick of light and shadow, this discovery set the stage for the emergence of Mars's very own Bermuda Triangle. The Mars Global Surveyor mission of the late 1990s and early 2000s further stoked the fires of intrigue. Anomalies such as the face on Mars and the pyramids of Cydonia fueled conspiracy theories, suggesting that ancient civilizations had once thrived on Mars and left behind cryptic monuments. The region surrounding these anomalies, dubbed the Mars Triangle by enthusiasts, seem to be a hotspot for unexplained phenomena. Mars missions exploring this enigmatic zone often reported peculiar occurrences, from unexplained communication glitches to navigation problems. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, for instance, experienced intermittent signal losses in this region, leading to moments of tension at mission control. Similarly, the Curiosity rover occasionally struggled with its navigation systems when traversing the Martian terrain near Cydonia. While scientists and engineers have largely attributed these anomalies to the harsh Martian environment and the inherent challenges of space exploration, the allure of the Mars Triangle remains strong. Speculation about alien interference, ancient extraterrestrial civilizations, or mysterious energy fields persists, adding to the mystique of this area. In reality, Mars's Bermuda Triangle is a confluence of scientific curiosity and human imagination. As we continue to explore and study the Red Planet, the mysteries of Cydonia and its surrounding region will likely be unraveled, one piece at a time, through diligent research and the steady progress of space science. However, the allure of the unknown and the imaginative human spirit ensure that the Mars Triangle will remain a captivating element of Mars's rich tapestry of mysteries for generations to come, inspiring dreamers and explorers alike to delve deeper into the secrets of the Martian frontier. That's just great. I guess no matter what planet we go to, the Bermuda Triangle will follow. At number 4, sunset missions. The Martian landscape is a canvas painted in the eerie hues of red and orange, but amid this alien beauty lies another wonder that has intrigued scientists and space enthusiasts: the mysterious and enigmatic blue sunsets of Mars. These captivating events have been observed by multiple Mars missions, most notably the Mars rovers Opportunity and Curiosity. Opportunity, launched in 2003, was among the first to witness these extraordinary sunsets. As it roamed the Martian surface, this rover captured stunning images of the sun as it dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in vivid shades of blue. These images sent shockwaves through the scientific community, prompting a flurry of research and speculation. Curiosity, NASA's rover that landed on Mars in 2012, continued to document these mesmerizing blue sunsets. The rover's Mastcam instrument captured breathtaking photographs of the Martian skyline, revealing a stark contrast to the warm, rusty tones that dominate the Martian daytime sky. While these blue sunsets are undoubtedly a visual spectacle, they have also given rise to sinister theories theories and concerns. Some scientists suggest that the presence of fine dust particles in the Martian atmosphere, particularly those composed of minerals like hematite, could be responsible for the unusual coloration. These particles, when suspended high in the atmosphere, scatter sunlight in a way that produces the blue hues. While this explanation is grounded in science, it has also led to unsettling speculations. One sinister theory proposes that the same dust particles responsible for the blue sunsets might pose a serious threat to future human colonization efforts on Mars. Fine dust has a knack for clogging machinery, coating solar panels, and damaging equipment. If these particles are widespread and persistent in the Martian atmosphere, they could pose a significant challenge to the sustainability of future missions and even human habitation. Furthermore, some conspiracy theorists have suggested the blue sunsets might be a sign of extraterrestrial intervention or hidden Martian secrets. These unfounded claims, often lacking scientific basis, add an element of mystery and intrigue to the phenomenon. Next up at number 3, the Schiaparelli disappearance. The Schiaparelli Entry, Descent and Landing Demonstrator Module (EDM) crash during the ExoMars program remains one of the most perplexing and unsolved mysteries in the annals of Martian exploration. Launched by the European Space Agency (ESA) and Roscosmos as part of the ExoMars mission in 2016, the Schiaparelli lander's fate was a stark reminder of the immense challenges inherent in landing on the Martian surface. Schiaparelli was tasked with a dual mission: to test new technologies for future Mars missions and to serve as a stationary lander to gather scientific data on the Martian environment. As it approached the red planet, it executed a series of precise maneuvers, including the critical entry, descent, and landing (EDL) phase. However, during the final moments of his descent on October 19, 2016, contact with Schiaparelli was abruptly lost. This sudden and unexplained silence left mission control in a state of shock and disbelief. The precise cause of this catastrophic failure remains a subject of intense investigation and speculation. Initial analysis suggested a possible issue with Inertial Measurement Unit data, also known as IMU, which erroneously indicated that the lander had already touched down when, in fact, it was still several kilometers above the surface. This misinterpretation led to the untimely shutdown of the landing sequence. Further complicating the mystery was the fact that Schiaparelli had a descent camera designed to capture images during its descent, but these images were not immediately available. When they were eventually recovered, they provided a tantalizing glimpse into the lander's final moments, but raised more questions than answers. The Schiaparelli crash, if it even crashed, was a stark reminder of the unforgiving nature of space exploration, especially on distant and inhospitable worlds like Mars. Despite meticulous planning and rigorous testing, unforeseen challenges can still lead to catastrophic failures. While subsequent missions, like the successful landing of the Perseverance rover, have demonstrated that Mars landings are indeed achievable, the Schiaparelli crash serves as a somber reminder of the complexity and risks involved. As technology continues to advance, lessons learned from the Schiaparelli will undoubtedly inform and improve future missions to Mars, ensuring that humanity's quest to unlock the secrets of the red planet persists undeterred by setbacks and mysteries like this one. And at number 2, RSLs. The recurring slope lineae, also known as RSL, of Mars stand as one of the most enigmatic and captivating mysteries in planetary science. These dark streaks that appear and vanish seasonally on the Martian surface have been observed by various Mars missions, including the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, and have sparked intense speculation about their origin and potential connection to Martian life. RSLs were first identified in 2011 by scientists analyzing images from the MRO, a mission equipped with high-resolution cameras that allowed for detailed observations of the Martian terrain. These dark, narrow streaks were observed to form and extend during the warm Martian seasons, only to fade away during colder periods. Their seasonal recurrence and flow patterns suggested the involvement of liquid, a tantalizing prospect considering the scarcity of liquid water on Mars's surface. One prevailing theory about RSL formation involves the presence of briny, salt-rich water. It is believed that these brines, containing various salts like perchlorates, can lower the freezing point of water and enable it to exist in a liquid state on the frigid Martian surface. Some scientists speculate that these brines may be the lifeblood of RSLs, trickling downhill, creating the dark streaks as they carry minerals and potentially even organic molecules. The tantalizing prospect of liquid water on Mars naturally leads to the question of whether or not these conditions could support Martian life. While the presence of water alone doesn't guarantee the existence of life, it raises intriguing possibilities. Microbes on Earth have shown remarkable adaptability to extreme environments, and Mars, with its RSLs, presents an environment with a potential niche for life, provided certain conditions are met. The study of RSL
cells on Mars has therefore been a priority of astrobiology research. The Mars Science Laboratory, MSL, with its rover Curiosity, has played a crucial role in this pursuit. While Curiosity was not specifically designed to investigate RSLs, it has contributed indirectly by exploring Gale Crater and analyzing the geology and geochemistry of its environment. The data gathered by Curiosity has been instrumental in building our understanding of the Martian landscape and the potential habitability of Mars. My only question is, why are these Martians spilling water everywhere? Those guys are pretty clumsy. But while we're on the topic of Martians, let's move on to number 1, moving rocks. The enigma of the moving rocks on Mars has long captured the imagination of scientists and space enthusiasts alike. These rocks, also known as rolling stones or sailing stones, seemingly defy the laws of physics as they traverse the Martian landscape. One of the most prominent locations where these mysterious rocks have been observed is the Martian region known as Meridani Planum. The Mars exploration rover Opportunity, which landed there in 2004, was the first to provide substantial evidence of these rolling stones. These rover missions, which were not explicitly tasked with studying these phenomena, unexpectedly stumbled upon them during their exploration of the Martian terrain. When pondering this titillating notion of moving rocks, one could speculate about the existence of an unknown or yet to be discovered Martian life form capable of manipulating them. Some naysayers suggest that the existence of alien life on Mars is highly unlikely. However, in the vastness of the cosmos, where the diversity of life is still largely uncharted, considering the possibility of alien involvement adds an element of mystery and wonder to the Martian landscape. The notion of extraterrestrial life subtly shaping the Martian environment raises intriguing questions. Could these beings possess a form of intelligence or advanced technology that allows them to manipulate their surroundings? Might they be using these rocks for some unknown purpose, perhaps as markers, tools, or even as part of a complex communication system? While it's crucial to approach such speculations with scientific rigor and skepticism, the mysteries of the Martian moving rocks continue to remind us of the vastness of the unknown in our exploration of the cosmos. Whether the answer lies in the forces of nature or the influence of alien entities, the quest to unravel the secrets of Mars remains an ongoing and thrilling adventure as we strive to understand the complexities of our neighboring planet and the potential for life beyond Earth.